Good morning.
That got the attention.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We're just going to get us rolling, I think.
Let's start off with a little bit of energy. So if everybody could just do a big applause for us, like we're superstars and you're superstars. We're all superstars. That feels so good. Amazing. What a great day to be together.
Beautiful morning. We just wanted to introduce ourselves before we get going with the agenda.
We're on TV, look.
Oh my goodness.
I've been on TV before.
Have you?
I have.
Tell us about that.
We'll tell you later.
Do you want to start by
Yeah, well, let's just
reminding people
introduce
who you are?
ourselves.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I am a relative. So I'm also an official auntie here. So throughout the discussions today, know that we are here as well. So if you just need to kind of chat and connect to some welcoming, warm energy, because some of the discussions are, can be activate some different feelings for each other. So just know that we're here to make sure that you feel like that you're in that circle. So if you ever feel disconnected from that, just look to one of us, come up to us, and just say, I just need some time. And we'll share that with you. I think that is something that I always like to say in spaces. I feel like one of these things about kind of finding out what is our purpose in our communities. And for me, I didn't know for a long time because I didn't know where I was from. And as a 60s scoop adoptee, I just always felt disconnected everywhere I went. And in this journey of discovery and being able to go through the class action for the 60s scoop and then have all my files opened and then go back home to my reservation and to get registered with my family and to really do that reconciliation has really allowed me to realize who I am and what I'm doing here. And part of my real teachings and my medicine, I believe, is through storytelling and being able to talk about how I feel. How about I feel as an Indigenous person, as I feel as a two-spirit trans person? How do I feel about being able to be in spaces and revealing myself? When generally speaking, my whole journey as a person, I couldn't do that for my own safety. But now I know that as an official auntie, and I take that ownership with pride, I navigate through that truth, and I create spaces that are brave. And I know, just like anybody else, I have the right to do that. And so what I choose to do is, knowing that the world is confusing and still in areas that are not safe, I do know that when I surround myself with just a core group of people that allow me to be vulnerable, allow me to be fabulous, allow me to be weird, allow me to be fearful, that's where I charge my energy. That's where I just kind of pump up my wingspan. I used to feel like a bird flying with nowhere to land. Now I feel like a bird with purpose. So now I fly, but I also use those wings to wrap around kin and to create spaces that are brave for them to be themselves. And we mentioned last night, I am, for those of you who don't know, my name is Jaylene. My stage name is Jaylene Time. I am from Treaty 4, Zagame Anishinaabe and Kawakatus Nation on my mother's side, and Métis Nation, Saskatchewan. I'm also on season 5 of Canada's Drag Race. I'm Miss Congeniality. Can I get an amen up in here? And that show is airing on Crave, so you can watch that. But when we talk about Drag Race, for me, as a trans person, as an artist, as a human being, and to have the opportunity to share that art on an international platform. I'll tell you this. I talked about my experience as a 60s scoop adoptee, and that over 8 million people viewed that online. And the majority of them didn't know what it was. So it reminds me and all of us that we really have work to do. But what I'm also reminded of is that when we create those spaces of a respectful heart share, that is where we're able to truly make a difference, because it encourages other people to feel like they can share something that's really integral and important to them. And that's what I still don't know fully, but I'm just open to it. Open to everything attached to nothing, showing up in a good way, knowing that I have found freedoms on many different levels in my life. So it's my opportunity and responsibility to encourage others to do the same. So I just want to pause on that for a minute here. So if you could just take a moment here to think about the people, that why we're here. We talk about our missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two spirits. If we could just take a moment right now just to pause for our relatives. So thank you. I say that, and sometimes when I speak, it comes through spirit. That was just spirit that just swooped into me because of everyone here. What we've created here, like last night, coming together. When we start the day today, knowing we're doing some good work together for each other. That's who I am, and I'm so I get to meet new friends and to be able to lead a day like this that is just has been curated through care and heart and respect. And so we thank our elders. I was joking saying I saw them at the casino last night, but I won't tell anyone. But you know, that we get to have the blessing of having elders with us here. And for all of those, you know, sometimes we just don't know if our voices are of value here. And I just want to make it very clear here that, you know, we're going to connect with each and every one of you here. And we know that you're all bringing great medicine here. And I'm just so thrilled to start the day with my new friend.
Thank you so much, Jaylene, for setting the stage in such a beautiful way. I also want to acknowledge each and every one of you, and also the original stewards of this land, and the ancestors that are here on the Kletley traditional territory. And also to acknowledge, to continue to build on what Jaylene said, that, you know, you all bring such a unique, beautiful, lived experience. And we're gathered here to share in a safe space, to learn from each other, to hold each other up, to move through these 2 days that have been put together for all of us to be able to connect in community. And I have the pleasure and privilege of co-emceeing the day with Jaylene, and I just met her as well last week online when we were going through the run of show, and I just feel so yes. Okay. I just feel so grateful to be able to share this space with you, and to hold space for all of us to move through these 2 days. So my name is Chastity Davis Alphonse. I wasn't at last night's event. I was traveling up from Victoria. I was facilitating in Victoria yesterday, so I didn't get here until about midnight last night. But I heard that it was a beautiful evening, and you might have seen my son, who is 2.5 years old, who came in a little bit later last night, but he's around. His name's Chinook. And I'm from the Sliammon Nation on my mother's side, which is located just outside of the Sunshine Coast here in beautiful British Columbia. And I'm also English and Ukrainian on my father's side. I'm married into the Sokoteen Nation. And as I mentioned, I'm a proud mother of a 2-year-old son. And I've been working in and around Indigenous relations for close to 2 decades. And standing with our women, our girls, the two-spirit and gender diverse relatives that are also standing in solidarity so that we can shift the reality of the national tragedy that's still happening. And I have been involved with supporting the work of the BC Assembly of First Nations, through working with them on the First Nations Gender-Based Analysis Toolkit and other gatherings like this one. So I see some familiar faces, and I'm just looking forward to connecting further in these 2 days. And I also wanted to remind people that if I have some housekeeping things, so I wanted to remind people that if you haven't registered, to register at the front with the BCAFN staff, Victoria and Ada. And
They also have some swag up there too, which is
Yes.
really cute.
yeah, get them before they're all gone. There's notebooks.
Chargers.
Yes.
This really cute charger.
Those little pop-up things for the back of your phone.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Kleenex.
I got a chief and council key ring. It's
Yes.
beautiful.
And all the vendors outside who have been here to ensure that we're adorned with beautiful beadwork and funny T-shirts, land back T-shirts and anti T-shirts and all of that. So make sure you support the vendors that are here as well. And I just also want to remind people that we have the Indian Residential School survivors, elders, and support people in the Sacred Spirit Room, which is located out this door. Christina Dragon, who I've known for a long time, she's so lovely. Is here with her colleague Henry Morgan, and they're offering brush down and smudging. And if you just need a moment to, just take your breath and catch yourself and come back to the present moment, they're in the Sacred Spirit Room. We also have a beautiful knowledge keeper, Simple Yan, who is an Indian day school and residential school survivor. He's also a Squamish counselor, a respected leader, mentor, and cultural advisor. And he is here as well to support if you just need somebody to speak to. But also just to remind you that Jaylene and I are also here if you just want to grab a moment. We're here to hold space for you and to hold you up as well. So those are some of the housekeeping things that I wanted to go through today, and just remind you that it is 2 days. They can be long. We do have some breaks, and we'll have some nourishing food throughout the day, but to just remember to take care of yourself throughout the day. Know that you can step out if you need to. Remember to stay hydrated, drink lots of water. If you see that somebody's having a moment, to just, reach out and be there for them as well. So just, being mindful of our presence in the room. So to begin our day, we have opening remarks from 4 esteemed leaders. And unfortunately, the British Columbia Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Terry Teegee is unavailable to be here with us. Not because this isn't important, but because he works hard all year and he's on vacation. And I think this was planned after he had booked his vacation. So we have a welcome video from him. If we could have AV cue that up, that would be great.
Deneza Tsekuza Skyza. First of all, I want to acknowledge the territory of the Claytley Tene, the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Dakish people, north central BC. I want to thank the knowledge keepers, Simple Yan, for your prayer this morning. And I want to thank you for the support and the words from the elder from the Claytley Tene territory. We are honored to have you join us today and attend this very important event. It is with deep respect and gratitude that I welcome you all here today to the 2025 Women, Girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA Plus Dialogue Session. Held on the beautiful unceded territory of the Claytley Tene First Nation. We want to thank Claytley Tene people for their ongoing stewardship of the land and for welcoming us on their territory. Although I'm not able to attend in person this year, my thoughts and strengths are with you all as you participate in this meaningful dialogue session that will inform our advocacy at the BCAFN. I hold my hands high to our BCAFN Women's Representative, Cheryl Rule, and BCAFN 2SLGBTQQIA Representative Maureen Askew, and others who are supporting this event for their strong leadership and advocacy. This year's gathering, entitled Healing in Action, our intentions were to bring together First Nations chiefs, leaders, knowledge keepers, elders, youth, and community members from across BC. Together, we can create safe spaces to speak truth, to be heard, and to move forward in unity and in purpose. This dialogue is not only a time for discussion, it's a time for transformation. Over these 2 days, you will explore the intersecting challenges that continue to impact First Nation women, girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA plus people. Challenges born from colonialism, systemic violence, and intergenerational trauma. But we are not defined by these harms. We are here to honor the stories of strength, resistance, and renewal and rise in their place. You will hear powerful keynote voices from Caroline Hilton and Cal Salem, who will both speak from lived experience. Voices that bring light to the pathways of healing and identity, and who remind us of our sacred roles and responsibilities to one another. Our roundtables will invite you not just to listen, but to lead, to offer your wisdom and vision toward building a community-driven solution. This is what healing in action looks like: reclaiming our voices, restoring our traditions, and reimagining a future where justice, equity, and visibility aren't just words, but realities. To our youth, you are the heartbeat of our nations. To our elders, your guidance is the foundation to our steps forward. To our 2SLGBTQIA plus community, you are loved, you are essential, and your presence here makes us stronger. To all our relations, we see you, we hear you, and we walk with you. Let us move through these days with our hearts open, fierce minds, and shared commitment to the liberation of our people. Let us honor those we've lost by standing firmly for those still here and for those yet to come. I welcome you to this dialogue session. I welcome to the work. Welcome to the healing in action. Thank you, Masicho.
Thank you to the team to ensure that we could have that opening address from Regional Chief Terry Teegee. And now I'm so honored to be able to invite the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, Grand Chief Stuart Phillips, to the stage to provide opening remarks. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip is a longtime advocate for our people in so many ways. He has been there for all of Indigenous peoples across Canada, and we're so blessed to have him here to support us here in British Columbia and to stand with us as Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse relatives. So please join me in welcoming Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. You can go on stage if you want at the podium, or you can use.
Think so? Why Pisnaxil y squeeze at you. I'm Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. I've been honored to engage in that position for the last 27 years. and have traveled extensively throughout the province and across the country and so on and so forth. And I've had the amazing and wonderful opportunity to meet so many people during my travels. And I'm honored to be here in Lheidli territory. This territory is very special for me. A few blocks over there somewhere, I went to treatment at the treatment center here in Nechako. And that was about 38 years ago. And I raised that because that was an action. That was a decision. My life was such a mess and, very toxic for my wife and for my children. And I knew I had to do something. So I went to treatment. And it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. It wasn't easy, but it was well worthwhile. And a phenomenon happened at that time. Most of the adult members in our community in Penticton went. So we just had half a dozen people shipping out every month, going to treatment centers all over the province. Totally made a difference in our community, in the relationships and whatnot. I'd like to express my gratitude for the open prayer, and I want to offer a shout out to BCAFN for organizing this amazing gathering. I hold my hands up to the leadership of BCAFN for having the vision and the understanding that what holds this world together is women. And I totally believe that from the bottom of my heart. For example, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs was founded by Dr. Grand Chief Rose Charlie. And in 1969, she began to organize with action, Moccasin Miles. And that was walking from Vancouver to Hope and back. And they were sponsored and so on and so forth. The money that they raised in that walk, they went out and bought suits for the chiefs. And the Union of BC Indian Chiefs came together in Kamloops, and all these chiefs in that historic picture are wearing suits. The interesting thing is some of them didn't fit. There was actual tags on some of them because they didn't pull them off because they were cowboys. They were longshoremen, they were fishermen. But they were all wearing suits at any rate, and that was Dr. Grand Chief Rose Charlie. So if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have the UBCIC and all the good connections that we've made over the years and the good work that we've been able to accomplish. Within the UBCIC, we have, we have our executive president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, but we also have a youth representative, a women's representative, and an elder representative. And in the past, it's been Kula Lewis, it's been Elaine Alec, and I knew I would miss one. Who did she say? Melissa Moses. Oh, at any rate, can you hear her? Melissa. Okay. And those three ladies have really made a difference in our dialogue and our discussions and our decisions. And I know the BCAFN has a similar structure, and most organizations today have that representation at the AFN and all the way down. And it's totally important. I always encourage everyone to not sit on your gifts. Each and every one of you are leaders, and you're blessed with a unique perspective and intuition and amazing intelligence. But sometimes you're shy. And you'll sit there thinking, why doesn't somebody say this? Well, that somebody is you. So you have to, give expression to what your heart is telling you to do. And I know most of you live by that. So I've always had the deepest respect for women, always. Because I found out in my life that women are the ones that pick up the pieces after the men make a total mistake. That's been the history of not only our people, but civilization. So, I've always held that belief. I've been blessed with 6 granddaughters and 9 grandsons, and 1 great-granddaughter and 1 great-grandson. So that never would have happened had I not went to Nechako. So when you make decisions to take action in healing, there's good things that flow from that. And we all know that we have a duty to hold each other up, and that's what we do. I want to offer a shout out to Bernie Williams. I saw her here earlier. Oh, there she is, way over there. Bernie Williams is one of the first women that I had the good fortune of meeting in the downtown east side when I became the president. And I went to the downtown east side women's building. I got all dressed up in my suit. I had a trench coat on and an umbrella, because I was going into the downtown east side. And the umbrella I didn't put up because I was going to use it to poke somebody if they came after me. So I go trotting down to the downtown east side women's center, and I was there for about 3 hours in a big circle. And I tell you, my hair was curled when I came out of that session. I never heard so much pain, so much anger, such terrible, horrible stories I heard in that circle. But what we did is we formed a relationship, and that wasn't easy. When I first started going down and meeting with what became known as the coalition, that meets regularly, I was hearing comments like, what's he doing here? The fact that I was a man and I was in their meeting, and I weathered that until, all this time out, they're my closest friends and allies, and we've done a lot of good work together. The Women's Walk for Justice was an amazing event, the walk across Canada, Bernie Williams and Gladys Raddick. That was absolutely amazing. It helped raise our profile. And now we have the Valentine's Day March, and we have marches in so many cities in this country, raising the awareness of violence against women. I read this morning when I was getting ready to come down here, the greatest violence that's perpetrated against women, and the statistics are astronomical, is intimate partner violence. It comes from our partners in the relationship. And statistics also say that it's something like 94% goes unreported. And it's the most underreported criminal activity in the country. I was in Fort St. John about 20 years ago, similar to this, and there was a lady there, and she stood up and she said, well, what should we do? And I said, organize, organize, organize. And you know, I'm very happy that that's exactly what we've done. We've done amazing things, but there's a long road ahead of us. And quite frankly, there isn't a day that goes by that when my granddaughters go out that door, you know, I'm totally worried until they come back. You know, that's the world we live in today with all the drugs and the violence. And so we gotta stick together, we gotta work together. When there's somebody in your community that is being abused, it's all of our responsibility to speak up. You know, at the very least, you know, we have counseling staff and that need to go to that home and, you know, talk to everyone, the children, the abused partner, as well as the perpetrator. You know, when you get that knock on the door and you open the door and there's 2 or 3 people standing there, I think you're going to think about changing your behavior, particularly if they keep coming back, maybe for the next time or something like that. So I just want to close off by saying that the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, the BCAFN, and the First Nations Summit, after years of bickering and arguing and fighting, decided 20 years ago to come together. And it was amazing. And we went to our organizations and we got a mandate to do that from all of the leaders, all of the chiefs. And it's amazing that we managed to stick together for 20 years. And we've achieved amazing things together. So in the event you need political support for projects you're doing, for issues and whatnot that you're confronted with, please reach out to us. In our organization, it's Andrea Glickman that is usually the point of contact. And, you know, we can assist in any way we can to help you with what you're up against. So just in closing, I want you to know that I drove up here from Vancouver. Very long drive. I just put it in cruise control in Vancouver. And next thing I knew, I was here. So, but I did that because these sessions are so important. They're absolutely important to get on top of that terrible, terrible violence that's happening, you know, to our grandmothers, to our aunties, to the women in our communities, to the girls. So I know that as time goes by, we'll continue to get stronger. We'll continue to have influence on legislation and laws that offer us greater support. And, you know, the work isn't easy, but our families are worth fighting for. Right? Lim Lim. Thank you.
Thank you, Grand Chief Stewart. Philip, I was just thinking about all the times I've seen Grand Chief speak and advocate and be with our people. And every time he speaks in a venue, he acknowledges his wife. Every single time he speaks at a venue, no matter who the audience is, he's always lifting up his wife. And I remember, like, every time I hear him doing that, I just think that's what we should all be doing in our lives, is uplifting the women in our life. And he, you know, talks about how his wife is the strength of him and his family. And so thank you, Grand Chief Stewart Phillip, for supporting us here today, for being in cruise control for the hopefully 10 to 12 hours on the way up. And we appreciate your ongoing support. We have a few more people that will be giving some opening remarks. I would now like to call up the BCAFN 2SLGBTQQIA plus knowledge keeper, Simple Jan, who I introduced earlier, our esteemed knowledge keeper and elder from the Squamish Nation. This morning, I had an opportunity to sit with him and all of the beautiful people at the table who were telling me that he is our two-spirit hero. So please join me in welcoming Simple Jan to the stage.
Oh. Chinquaman told me up Eoswat seem to sequatos chit and simply on Tinat Chinclash and Ochomeoch Tuchlam to Humoxis in Ochomeoch on one Nelson Squallerins wait seem to Gletnet Tine Stalmok chit Quaman Tommy seem. First of all, very grateful to see each and every one of you, our respected elders, matriarchs, kupis, chiefs that are in the room, our drag queen grandmothers, drag king grandfathers, and everyone under this beautiful rainbow. My ancestral name is Simple Jan. I am of Musqueam Squamish ancestry. The government registered me Squamish. I am a very proud 64-year-old two-spirited man, and I'm very honored to represent the BC Assembly First Nations 2SLGBTQQIA+ as their knowledge keeper, because I'm an old queen. I'm gonna take my glasses off so I can read, because I can't read with my reading glasses. So good morning, chiefs, leadership, elders, knowledge keepers, and special guests. Again, Chinquamantomi today, Stalmoch, our host nations, thank you for allowing me into your beautiful territory. Back in 1983, I worked for an organization called United Native Nations. And we used to come up here to the annual general meeting, and I had to go with the check for $250,000 to the Royal Bank at Broadway in Granville and cash that check, and then bring the travel funds back up to the UNN. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I could have ran away and spent all that money, bought more wigs. But I was honorable. I returned back to UNN and was able to assist distributing those travel funds to the families who were gathering. So, I am, you couldn't tell I'm gorgeous. You couldn't tell I'm gay. I'm also very masculine. I have a drag name, Your Mama. My first experience with drag queens was 1976 at Love Affair in Vancouver. I seen these 7 feet drag queens. I thought they were goddesses. I was like, oh my goodness, look at the size of feet on her. Size 14. Could knock her down in a windstorm. As a now very proud 64-year-old two-spirit man, I grew up on a reserve in North Vancouver called known today as Mission Indian Reserve. It really wasn't a safe place. I'm an Indian day school and residential school survivor and survivor of child sexual abuse prior to going to residential school on the community, in my community and Musqueam. And so, it didn't really give me the tools to navigate this thing we call life. And, my earliest memory of dressing up in my mom's dresses and putting on her high heels, I was 3 years old. And it was frowned upon. My dad didn't really appreciate that. He'd give me a spanking now again. You don't wear girls' clothes. Watch me. And so, I had to navigate very confused in my life because I didn't know why God, Buddha, Yos, Chasiam created me the way I am. But, it took a lot of personal healing and personal growth to understand that I am absolutely stunning, gorgeous. And, I do believe, I went through a program called Choices. Any Choices graduates here? And I've also coached at the spin-off of that called Break Free. And choices really helped me deal with my core issues. My core issues are the residential school, Indian day school, and the child sexual abuse. But it also helped me understand that that 3-year-old boy was absolutely beautiful. Because my earliest memory, I was 3 years old when I was being abused. And so, coming home from residential school, for us residential school survivors and day school survivors, we did survive a lot of trauma. And some of that trauma, it can be triggering for those in the audience. But, I was able to find some tools to identify why that happened. And through my own personal healing and personal journey, I came to a point of forgiveness in my life. Forgiveness to the perpetrators because I was able to forgive them to set me free so they no longer live rent free in my head. And it took a lot, and it still takes a lot. I still have for those who've gone through the program know about self-defeating tapes. There are days where I still feel very ugly, very dirty, and those are tapes. And so it's taken me many years to heal that trauma. Healing is a personal journey for us, for me, and personal journey for each of you. So, the next couple of days, we're going to have some dialogue. Some of that dialogue may trigger you. My schooling is in child and youth care, so, I was able to be given even more tools to help the youth. I believe I am a strong advocate for our 2SLGBTQQIA plus gender diverse youth that come from remote communities from the north here, and they come into the city. I want to make sure that I create an environment that's going to make them feel safe, and that safety, for those who are in these rooms, please be aware that you are in a safe place. My schooling is in child and youth care. I do have a duty to report, even though I'm no longer in the field of child and youth care. I do have a duty to report, and that's the responsibility of my schooling. And so, I do want to encourage all of you that, there are going to be times where the conversation will get really dark and really heavy. And in order for us to navigate through these challenges, I want you to feel that you are supported through and through. Now I'm going to go back to my script because I was given the name Talks a Lot at the residential school conference. I don't know where they get that. I was screaming at George Erasmus because he was sitting down while our Squamish and Musqueam and Litwa elders were sitting and they couldn't see him. They're like, get up, you stand up. Well, I traveled across Canada. Not my fault. You stand for our elders. He stood for our elders. So that's a little bit about me. I gave you a whole life of my personal journey. So through the next 2 days, we will be participating in topics that may be triggered. I just said that, and conversation challenge our thoughts, our beliefs, and sometimes even our comfort zones. As mentioned by the chairs, I am also here as a resource at the event. We all know that life is not always simple. There are moments we must talk about things that are difficult issues of injustice, pain, and or misunderstanding. Hard conversations are not easy, but they are essential. Without them, we cannot heal, we cannot grow, we cannot build understanding. However, it is not just about having the conversation. It is about how we approach it. Having a good mind, a mind that is calm, open, and willing to listen. It is the key to making these conversations meaningful, and constructive. We must approach these moments not from a place of anger, frustration, or fear, but with respect, humility, and willingness to truly hear one another. We must remember that the people we are joined are not enemies. They are relations just like us, and we all have our own experiences, our truths, and our emotions. When we approach hard conversations with a good mind, we create space for understanding, growth, and connection. It is equally important that we are considerate of others. This means recognizing that everyone comes to the table with their own history, their own burdens, their own struggles. In our conversations, we must be mindful of their experiences and we must speak with kindness, empathy, and care. For far too long, Indigenous people have faced historical oppressions at the hands of colonial systems. Lands taken, languages silenced, children torn from families. These are not isolated events. These are systemic efforts, deliberate policies of cultural erasure, assimilation, and control. Residential schools, forced removals, and the denial of basic rights stripped communities of identity, dignity, and autonomy. We must not forget the impacts of this history, not defined to the past. We live on today in systemic inequalities in education, healthcare, justice, housing, and representation. The marginalization of First Nation voices, knowledge, and tradition continues, often in insidious and overlooked ways. But we are also here to speak of hope, of a future built on truth, justice, and change. It is about listening deeply, speaking honestly, and acting boldly. It means confronting uncomfortable histories, challenging unjust systems, and creating spaces where First Nation voices lead the conversation and hold the pen. And with that, I say, Chin Kwamantomiap. I am grateful to you all. Again, our respected elders, matriarchs, kupis, chiefs, drag queen grandmothers, drag king grandfathers, and the Tene families. We're honored that you allow us to have these really amazing conversations. And, just, again, I'm going off script. We're human beings who are allowed to be mad, we're allowed to be angry, we're allowed to be happy, we're allowed to be pissed off. But, we can do it in a very respectful way. It's okay when we're having conversations not to be personal. It's okay to have those conversations. And remember to take care of yourselves, because if you can't take care of yourselves, how can we take care of others? These are choices tools for those who remember. This is going to be amazing 2 days. And remember, feelings buried alive never die. So again, really pay attention to what's happening in here, because if what's happening here is really powerful, then we need to have some supports in place. What does that support look like? We do have people in the spirit room that will be koipe on cedar brushing, and offer you some supports that way. I am also available for conversation. Again, I'm sworn to confidentiality, so what's said to me, shared with me on a one-to-one basis, it is kept confidential unless there's safety risks involved. And again, just want to make sure that all of you are okay. And if you enjoyed what you hear, give me 1 clap. If you didn't like what you heard, give me 2 claps. And if you freaking love me, make some noise.
Woohoo! I think you're loved. Thank you, Simple Jan. And our final, last but certainly not least, person who is going to give us some opening remarks today to help us set the stage is the BCAFN Women's Representative Cheryl Rule. Yay, she's the Vice Chief for the Coldwater Indian Band. Cheryl's traditional name is Shamyam. Did I do it? Yes. Which was gifted to her by her grandfather, Peter Bob. Cheryl descends from a long line of ancestry in the Coldwater Indian Band. And she spent most of her early life hunting, fishing, and harvesting medicinal and food plants with her family, a true matriarch. This instilled in her a deep love and respect for her people and the land. So welcome, Cheryl.
Hentla Yedekshisht, which is good morning. I am really excited to be here today. I traveled in from Kamloops last night on the plane, and they were telling us they might turn around because of the storm. And I'm like, no, I gotta make it. So I'm happy to be here. I would like to acknowledge all the chiefs, the leadership, the elders, the knowledge keepers, and all the community. It's so nice to see all our elders here today. And I raise my hands to you because, we really need you to be with us. You're the ones who teach us and show us how valuable it is and important work that we need to continue. So, Guksham. Welcome to the 2025 Women, Girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA Plus Dialogue Session, Healing in Action. It's such a beautiful territory. I was excited to see the sunshine this morning, and I really am grateful for being welcomed here. And I want to say Guksham to the elder Minnie for her welcome last night. I'm sorry I missed it. I endured a general band meeting online as I was sitting there waiting at the airport, and continued as I got to the hotel last night. So I was up really late dealing with community and all the issues that we face. I really want to say Guksham to RC for the warm welcoming message we received this morning, and Guksham to our Grand Chief, Stuart Phillips, for the powerful words and presence. You know, I appreciate all the wonderful stories he shares and all of our history and leadership that we need to make sure that we continue. Thank you, Simplion. You're just amazing. I love your energy. And, you know, I've really grown to enjoy my time with the council that we have. And it's exciting because I always look forward to traveling with them. So, Guksham. You know, we always have to bring clarity and warmth to even some of the most challenging conversations we have. And it helps us create a safety net, and it helps us uplift and transform environments, offering light where it is most needed. So it's important to support each other through this healing. Finally, Guksham to all those who signed in and registered and are here today to lead the direction of the BCAFN and some partner advocacies and initiatives that are taking place. My name is Inslego. That's where I'm from. It's Coldwater Reserve. And, you know, I'm really proud of our little community. It's really small, but it has a lot of growth, and we need to always uplift our people. Currently, we had a Calling Our Spirit Home event where we walked from the residential school to Coldwater, and it was a powerful 4 days. And I was really proud of my community for doing that. And it was a lift of a very weighted lift of hurt and anger and sorrow. And by the time we got back to our community after 4 days, it was like it was lifted. So it was powerful work. That ceremony really changed a lot of our elders in how they felt. And I was really proud to be part of that. And we need to continue to do that in our communities. Start having ceremonies where we're creating healing. My traditional name is Shimyam, and that was gifted to me by my grandfather, which means rainbow. My grandparents are Peter and Ada Bob and Paul and Lily Oppenheim. And my mom is Beverly Bob, and my dad is William Bob. I have spent many years learning to harvest and gather and to create really wonderful things. And I'm very grateful that, you know, I've been a cedar weaver, a birch bark maker, a beater, a sewer, and I've also made traditional medicines. And, you know, it's important that we carry these traditions on, that we teach our children and our youth. I worked in the school district for 9 years, and I taught cultural teachings, language. I built curriculum in the language. And now I work as a chairperson for the Coldwater School. And there we're building policies, and we're redoing the HR policy. We're trying to become a governance board, as well as we just are updating our post-secondary education policy. I've taken a lot of wonderful trainings, such as negotiation training, leadership training, and I've been a business owner. I've owned a clothing store and a salon, and those were good paths for me to go down. And I'm really happy that I did that because it's really taught me how valuable it is to know about business. In creating business, you're uplifting your community by hiring your membership, and you're building them up in skills like leadership. And, you know, I was really proud of that time. And then I moved into politics, which is really good too. You know, it's allowing me to use my voice in being a good role model. I'm a grandmother. I have 7 grandchildren, and I'm really proud of them. You know, it's very nice when my granddaughter says, "Come on, we gotta go pick our shwisham. Let's go. It's ready. I see it." So I'm really proud of that. You know, it's important that we value and uplift our children. As a regional representative, my mission is to be compassionate, trustworthy, transparent, a strong voice for First Nations rights, human rights, universal dignity, environmental justice, and raising awareness for all missing and murdered and Indigenous women, girls, our children and youth, and 2SLGBTQQIA+, and men and boys. I also value and uplift our First Nations language and culture, our traditional teachings from Indigenous knowledge keepers, elders, healing for residential school survivors, and advocating for children in care and preventative programming for vulnerable youth and young adults in the current drug crisis. It is my honor to share an update with you all on the BCAFN First Nations Gender Equity Strategic Action Plan. Since 2017, BCAFN has been hosting dialogue sessions to engage First Nations women, Two-Spirit, trans, non-binary, and gender and sexual diverse people on their priorities and provide space for connection. Out of these sessions, women, girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA+ declaration was developed that affirmed a number of truths about the vulnerable identities and visions of First Nations women and Two-Spirits, trans, non-binary, and gender and sexual diverse people. This declaration represents a powerful coming together, a call for action. That is where the need arose for a strategic plan to implement the declaration. BCAFN received a mandate to continue with their work through the resolution in 2020 and 2011, and we secured funding in 2021. So based on this resolution in 2020/11, the intent of the strategic plan is to support the BCAFN and like-minded organizations in implementing the declaration, as well as the BCAFN What We Heard report on the MMIWG 2S+ and previous BCAFN dialogue session reports in the context of existing recommendations and mandates provided by First Nations in BC, such as the National Inquiry into the MMIWG 2S+. Rooted in these documents are 3-part vision guides that purpose of this plan. First Nations women and 2SLGBTQQIA+ representation and leadership. 2, wellness, healing, and identity are reclaimed and restored. And 3 is ending systematic discrimination. There are 9 principles that form the foundation of this plan. There's sovereignty, healing and hope, culture, collaboration and partnership, intersectionality, using best practice and tools, action and accountability, representation and leadership, and ensuring a holistic approach. In terms of the process, BCAFN considered existing reports and recommendations in developing the action plan framework, which includes the vision and principle, the structure of the goals, and the actions. We engaged in the early framework elements in 2022 and then shared a final draft this past January at the Women's Chief and Leadership Caucus meeting in 2024. The implementation of this plan will be based on the principles, and the time frame is set to span from 2024 to 2027, but this is flexible. The plan can be revisited or extended at any time if needed. We secured a mandate to implement the action plan via Resolution 01/2024 to support the BCAFN to implement the First Nations Gender Equity Action Plan, which allowed us to move forward in our work and how and why we are here to engage with the BC First Nations women, girls, two-spirited, trans, non-binary, men and boys, and gender and sexually diverse people on their priorities and provide space for connection. Outlined in the event program, we are current BCAFN and partner initiatives, and we know we can provide us with through feedback today and tomorrow, which is important to us. We encourage you to provide detailed comments and observations, both big, picture, and specific, so we can make meaningful improvements. If you'd like to read and familiarize with the action plan, I will be collecting contact information to share via email, or you can find it on the BCAFN website on the priority areas section entitled Women, Girls, and 2SLGBTQQIA+. So I really want to thank you for allowing me to share this information, and I look forward to our sessions later. So, good job.
Thank you, Cheryl. I was caught up in. We want to thank the BCAFN representatives for their good work and ongoing dedication to the work. As you can tell, it takes so many people to make sure that we have access to the funding, to the training, to the support at every level. So thank you all. I'd like to open a space like this to hear all this beautiful energy. I'm drawn to say strength, nurture, truth. And these are all things that I respond to. A lot of times I work in research in a Two-Spirit program, and what we do is we help be able to communicate to our nations what we want to do. And we want to increase the access and the support to make lives better. And for me, sometimes a whole lot of words from reports, I get lost. And so I always think about when people are up here sharing and they have the courage to say that healing and action for them is personal. It's your sobriety. It's your taking care of our grandmothers and recognizing the importance of keeping our traditions alive. You know, all of this is something that I can understand. And I think that that's a lot of the work that we do together, because one thing I think is important is for our future is to make sure legions of people who have been displaced, who haven't felt like their voice is important, that we create pathways for them to be included. So we talk about our two-spirit kin and gender nonconforming, and just, I always look at it as like, you know, when people find out who they are, we create a space where they feel safe to share that. I just love that so much. So I just wanted to say thank you all for the work that everybody's doing, because I could feel it. I could feel it, and I get to take that with me. We all get to take that with us. The drag queen grandmothers, that always gets me. I just love it because for so long it's like we were like, people just thought we were just kind of clowns. We just made people laugh and, oh, those are the, them over there. And for me now it's like, no, this is a strength. It is a real power of expression, a real truth and a real exploration of what energy means. It's just beautiful. So I would like to introduce our first keynote. It's just my honor to introduce Carol Ann Hilton. This event is a hybrid event, and we will welcome Carol Ann Hilton to the stage for our first keynote. In this keynote, Carol will reflect on the challenges she faced as an Indigenous woman in spaces not designed for her, and how healing, both personal and intergenerational, became essential to overcoming these obstacles. Carol Ann Hilton is a distinguished Indigenous business leader, author, and visionary strategist. Thank you. Of Nuu-chah-nulth, descent from Hesquiat Nation on Vancouver Island. If you want to read more about it, Carol's biography is included in the event program, and she will be taking autographs directly after in a meet and greet. She is the founder and CEO of the Indigenomics. See, we're doing this together for each other. Institute, the Global Center of Indigenomics, and the Global Indigenous Technology House. Hilton is renowned for her pioneering the Indigenomics movement, a transformative economic framework rooted in Indigenous worldviews that emphasizes relationality, sustainability, and collective prosperity. Whew. That is amazing. I cannot wait to hear her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction and the invitation to come spend in time here today. I found in working across this country that our Cree friends and our French friends have a hard time saying indigenomics. So let's try it together. Are you ready? Indigenomics. It's that thick Cree I see. So good to be here in the territory. So good to be welcomed here. It's been a long time since I've been here in Prince George. Uklasish, Caroline Hilton, Heshquiak Supsish, Uklas Wakatush Koata Umti. I am Nuu-chah-nulth. I come from the Heshquiat Nation. I come from the House of Mamayuch of the Heshquiat people. We come from a whaling people. Fierce, fierce people. I'm so in awe of how our people move through the world. I come from a chief's house on my grandfather's side, and I come from a whaling house on my grandmother's side. And I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge this reality that we gather in, to acknowledge the traditional language of here, to acknowledge the traditional language of here, to acknowledge the place names that make up this, the matriarchal names, and all the ceremonies that have kept this place alive for our ability to come together, to be present, and with our values transmitted across time, that we can remember those strings of content that reflect best of how we each describe our own reality and of who we are. I wanted to reflect on my traditional name, Wakatush. I have two. One is referring to, the short version is Big Sister, and it means that I come from a line of the oldest woman in my family. So my mother was the oldest, and my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and so on. So that lineage of women, I feel deeply within my bloodline. I also have a second name from my grandmother's house, and it refers to tip of the harpoon. And it's a powerful name and was reflected to me as the courage to go in first. And I think that I grew into those names in a very powerful way of being displaced, of being a child in care, to finding my way back home to our people. And I say I've been home longer than I was away. And when I did come home, our elders talked to me and said, our system and structure is in the wolf potlatch system. And it was said that the wolves took me and cared for me and had me in a space that, while I was aware of the dysfunction and the displacement, that essentially my ability to return to who I am as a Nuu-chah-nulth person, of who I am as a Heshkwit lady, that in all of that, that is the healing, that's the motion that's required to be able to move us from what we've experienced and the place inside of us that requires courage. I'm very infatuated with this concept of fearlessness right now. It's the opposite of the concept or experience of when is the moments in our lives that took a lot of courage. And I feel like there's this being kind of string of interrelated moments of how I experienced the absence of courage and what it meant to stand in this place right now of what fearlessness is and what that means. I wanted to refer to some of these moments of when life reflected back to me about my role, about my responsibility, about my ability to stand in my truth as a young person and as a leader. A number of years ago, actually, I had, my uncle had decided that he was going to go on tribal journeys, and he decided that not only was he going to build the canoe and harvest it directly from the old village, he was going to stop drinking, he was going to harvest it, he was going to carve it, and he was going to bring our family together. And part of what that meant was his ability to address his addictions and how he showed up as a governing traditional leader. And while I thought that was an amazing initiative, I thought I will go up and be part of the family and be part of the canoe and leave from the old village, of which canoes hadn't left there in well over 100 years. And to realize in that moment that as we left as a family in the old village in a canoe that hadn't been occupied in that old space, in that ancient space for hundreds of years, that it literally felt like the ancestors were watching us, and that there was this coming together of our family to be able to literally paddle together. And I thought, I'm going to stay with my uncle a night or two. Maybe I'll go to hot springs, I'll go over to a house, I'll hop off in to Fino, and that was that. And I supported my family. 3.5 weeks later, I was in Campbell River speaking our traditional language to thousands of people on behalf of the canoe family with my legs shaking, because there's one thing to speak to our people, but to do that in our language. And in that moment, that representation to stay in the canoe, that concept of, I had been absent from myself in so many ways, and to find your voice and to be present and to be able to look at that experience of in what ways had I not stayed in my own canoe, and to really understand and look at that formation of how I needed to be present in my own voice, in my own leadership, and who I was and who I was becoming. So the evolution of my voice, even as a young person, I was a teenager and I literally had no voice. I would shake if someone talked to me. My knees would literally shake. And I think to come from that place of knowing what that felt like, to be able to build those moments of my ability to respond from who I am, from where I come from, and from what I'm creating. I think that this concept of fearlessness has very much, I love this theme of healing in action, because the evolution of my work of Indigenomics and the evolution of myself, it's a parallel process. I had to do the work on myself in order for Indigenomics to emerge. And that's the cold, raw truth. And it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't beautiful. It was difficult. And I think to be able to bring into focus this experience of fearlessness, of my ability to be clear on my voice, to be clear on what I'm saying, and to be able to live in a way that my words land. And that's one of the teachings from my family, is speak so that your words land. But it's not in the moment that your voice opens to speak. It was everything you did before that. It was how you lived and who you choose to engage with in conversations, what you eat, how you think, ceremony, all of those aspects. So this realization of the activation of my voice and my responsibility, it really meant that I had to be clear in what I was saying yes to in my own life, who I was saying yes to in my life, how I put boundaries up. And somewhere in there, as I began to create the courage to say no to what was not working in my life, it evolved into this concept of sacred boundaries, where in my 20s I didn't understand my own sacredness. And to actually understand the evolution of your own boundaries are sacred, that your voice, your energy, your space, your thoughts, all of those aspects make up your ability to lead, to speak, to be present, and to support. I think that this experience of fearlessness, as a young person, I was put into leadership roles within our family and within our nation. And I was if anyone knows on the West Coast, the War in the Woods, I was the next generation of leaders. So that transmission of a very strong warrior state to look at this standing up of the truth of who we are as Nuu-chah-nulth people, that our ability to facilitate our collective voice and our ability to collectively facilitate who we are as Nuu-chah-nulth people. So as the next generation to that, to lead the institutions that came as an outcome of our ability to stand up as people and say this needs to be transmitted. We need the places for our sacred ceremonies. You can't log there. So all of these aspects, what happened in the collective, also shaped this group of young leaders from our nation that was the next generation, that understood in a very, very real way that responsibility of our language, of that concept that we see across so many of our Indigenous realities, of interconnection and responsibility and how our decisions are transmitted across time and generations. And to inherit the structures of a strong stance of who we are as people, that are right to continue, that are right to economy, that are right to govern, and the emergence of the structures and institutions that emerged from that. There was also this powerful moment that in itself, the realization of the chief's house that I come from, the translation of it as Mama Yuch, it means living on the edge. And while we look at the territory from a topographical perspective, to understand that our people no longer live in our old village, that our house doesn't exist in that way, in a physical form, on the place of the inheritance of the bloodline. To understand that essentially the living on the edge meant that the leadership of our house happened in a different way. So that concept of living on the edge was something that stayed close with me as a way to understand what that meant to come from a chief's home, to essentially understand that the courage to be able to realize that the teachings of our people, of our home, and the voice of what that meant to be Heshkwit, that I had something to say. And there was this moment where I realized I actually have a lot to say. I really have a lot to say. And there was this moment where I was invited to be on the Federal Economic Growth Council, and I was a senior advisor to the federal finance minister through my work with Indigenomics. And I had realized they had done all their kind of surveying of me and had come up with this idea that they reflected to me, that they had said, you know, we've done our due diligence of who is Carol Ann Hilton. And what they said to me was, Indigenomics is neutral. And I thought that was an interesting concept because I don't feel neutral. I don't feel like what the response of Indigenomics is essentially my reflection of the experience of our people, of the economic displacement of who we are. In all of our experience of how we identify and how we show up in this moment, our ability to respond to that. And in this formation that I have something to say, I realized that there was no one in the federal government that was actively designing for Indigenous economic growth. They were designing in response to the absence of it, but the realization of actual Indigenous economic growth. So I stood in my own truth and said, $100 billion Indigenous economy is possible. I stood in our own truth and said, our people are powerful people. And to be able to realize that I could speak while my knees shook, to realize that I could bring into focus a target that was something like the tip of a harpoon, to realize that the activation of my name, of my house, of my Indigenous reality, and all the experience of displacement, well, that happened to me as an individual Indigenous woman, that also happened to us at a collective level. So when people ask me what I do, I say I do two things. First, I'm gonna kick the Indian Act's ass, and then I'm coming for neoclassical economics. So the first book I wrote was called Indigenomics, Taking a Seat at the Economic Table. And I'm often misunderstood of what table I'm referring to. There's this old picture in the 70s of our community in the old village, and they had this long table in the field. And the photographer captured this beautiful moment where everyone was reaching for food. There's table on the outside, people reaching for food, smiling in the abundance of the territory, in the sunshine, in the freedom of our space and our reality. That's the table that I'm talking about. The Indigenous people making a room at the economic table is making that space for ourselves in our own modern reality. We're not here to participate in the larger economy. We're here to activate our teachings and who we are and what's being transmitted to us. And whether that's our traditional gatherings or occupying space, the experience of the concept of Indigenomics is really about the evolution of our rightful place at our own economic table. The concept and experience of economic displacement is something that in my second book, The Rise of Indigenous Economic Power and the Deconstruction of Indian Act Economics. In this book, I used artificial intelligence to break down the original transcript of the Indian Act. So if you understand digital technology on the websites, every time that there is a addition or adjustment to the Indian Act, it gets cleaned. So the older versions, the older versions, the older versions. So as you can imagine, like a PDF document, it's very difficult to find the actual original version of the Indian Act. And what we did was read that, physically read the Indian Act into an AI system, and then use that to be able to voice-to-text editing, to be able to, you could do all kinds of things with this now with artificial intelligence. You can ask it to reflect the content back to you as if you're in grade 5. So it's a very much different way of speaking. And I can tell you, it was an ugly, ugly reading of it. And it was this weaving of this ugly kind of, that's all I could say. It was just a weaving of language that didn't even make sense. And so ugly. And to realize that to use AI to break that down of the original language and ask it, if this was one single person speaking, so the personification of the Indian Act, if it was a person, what would it say? So we created this big long list of this is a person and this is what they're saying to us, the Indians. And then we took that, you can't speak, you can't move, we look after your money, all of these aspects. We said, if this was a person and we ran what they spoke and ran it through the global mental health disorder manual, what would happen? And what it did was name this person as having some serious mental dysfunctions. So to diagnose the Indian Act as mentally ill, to be able to place that as a family member, to speak to, we are in a dysfunctional family, but we are on the power side of our ability to speak truth to that experience. I love this concept that we can call out and be able to refer to the dysfunction as a person and the wholeness of our teachings and our ability to respond and create who we are within our territories. We are a powerful people. I'm asked to speak in many, many places all over across corporations and governments. And I've always had a slight hesitation because as a primary message, we're a powerful people. We're also a humble people. We're very, very humble. But to understand the context that we say we're powerful people, to look at this idea of healing in action, to be able to understand the influences of how that has shown up within my life, where my grandfather's entire life is a ceremonial circle of how he does ceremony and how he lives, where my Uncle Joey working with people that changed for them to do their inner healing, changed the whole trajectories of family because one person healed. Where my Uncle Eddie, who carried some of the ceremonial objects of our house, where I watched him as a hereditary leader, he would make the decision to not drink alcohol. He would make the decision on the new moon to go and clean the ceremonial objects, and that he would realize that to bring his nephews along, he would eat less so he would have gas money to drive to Campbell River to be able to take the function of what was required to be transmitted across generations and within the family. I'll eat less. And I think those were beautiful, powerful depictions of healing in action, of the choices that we make, of how we prioritize what is most important to us as people. And I think to be surrounded by every single day this uprising of entrepreneurs, I think that's one of the most powerful sentences we can say today. I am an Indigenous entrepreneur. The amount of courage it takes to stand in the truth and to create a new trajectory, to believe in the tools that are in front of us. This concept of fearlessness, I wanted to return to. To be able to stand in a truth and believe in the discomfort, as artificial intelligence was reflected to me, I kept seeing this, that's not for us, that's not our way, that's not of the land, that's not, and this space that reflected an incomplete story, that our ability to look at the tools that are in front of us and adapt, that's why we're successful as people. And I think our ability to bring focus to the tools of our success, to frame that and operate within our worldview, that is its own kind of fearlessness. And that is the kind of power that I'm referring to, that our ability to respond in this moment, our ability to focus on what needs to be transmitted across generations. I refer back to this time, and this would have been maybe the 50s, where my Uncle Joey talked about in a house it. They realized as they were responding and kind of picking themselves off from what had happened at the schools, that they realized that there was business to be done, that there was work to be done. And they went to the gym and they said, okay, for one day, we're not going to drink. For one day, because we have work to do. And what they did was start, and pretty soon one person went off into the bathroom. Then pretty soon the drum beat sounded a little wonky. There's like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And not one single one of them was able to stay sober to be able to do that, but they also knew that needed to happen. I don't underestimate that moment to realize the power of what held on to our people, of what held on to our ability to be focused, but really that underlying realization of the work is in front of us, the ceremony must continue, and that our responsibility in that as leaders, some days it will require more courage. To be able to stand in fearlessness means to be able, from my perspective, to look at the stories and to look at the symbols that reflect how we're showing up now and in this moment. I was recently invited into a nation to develop their rights and title strategy. And a woman on council started speaking to the role that Coyote played in the stories and how there was weaving of that within the governing systems. And we used the Indigenomics AI tool, and we built a modern story that reflected a state of being and the symbols as Coyote and the sun to witness the power of who we are and how we show up across time of the work that we're doing, and that the transmission of rights and title and our responsibility, that story and the vibration of that is reflected in our ability to keep telling our stories, to keep singing our songs, and to keep doing our ceremonies. I wanted to reflect again on this experience of fearlessness in all that's happened to us, the power place to speak to that. There are people that do that work, that hold those that in safety, that hold those who are still lost in that story. And then there's another group that are designing our future. And we need both equally. We need those who hold the ones who are still lost and haven't found their voice and haven't found their path. We need those that are still being able to bring focus to what happened to us. But we just as much need the ones who are bringing focus to designing our future and to designing our well-being and to designing our place in our economy and to designing our place in our own future. My leadership in this work has really to realize that to create something from nothing, a word that didn't exist, the technology of a hashtag that brings together a narrative in digital technology, to imagine a possible future that is now in existence of Indigenous economic power today. My response in this has been the discipline of choosing to see Indigenous intelligence. Where do I see Indigenous intelligence? What does that look like? And whether that's our people beading, whether that's our people cleaning fish or harvesting or doing research or whatever these aspects of how we show up in our lives, our people are intelligent. And to realize and to choose to see that is also to choose to see beyond that story of what happened to us. I choose to see Indigenous excellence, because in that, the place to have a voice, the place to have courage, and the place to be able to respond. The response is the concept of what I've built Indigenomics to be. Indigenomics is me as a pissed off Indigenous woman, because Indigenous economic displacement through the Indian Act was unacceptable. To be able to move beyond the structure of what's happening to us and to be able to live free and to be able to live in our power, that is our ancestral prayers. To choose intelligence, to choose excellence, that is the freedom that everything that happened to us, that we can live within and that we can build and support for our people today. Let's have the courage to do this together. Thank you. I wanted to say I also have 5 Indigenomics books with me, so if anyone would like to, I have some over here as well.
Hand up quickly. Well, thank you so much. I was just leaned over here and I just said, that hit. Amazing. I want to talk to you after. That was just amazing. Thank you so much, Carol, for the amazing presentation. Carol offered inspiration and insight for those seeking to understand the transformative power of embracing our identity, the importance of mental and spiritual wellness, and how healing can fuel both personal growth and professional success. Thank you for sharing with us, and we have an offering for you here. Thank you so much. Right now we're gonna take a little break. A what? Did somebody say something? We're gonna take a 15-minute break right now, so you can go and smudge your lungs, go to the washroom, give somebody a hug, and we'll see you back in 15 minutes, and we'll see you soon. We'll be joined in about 11 a.m. just after.
And human rights with the guidance of cultural knowledge, systems, and the active implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples by holding colonial governments accountable to British Columbia's UN Declaration Act Action Plan and Canada's UNDRIP Action Plan. Our cultures and languages are gifts from this land, and Keisha is honored to be actively revitalizing alongside the matriarchs, elders, knowledge holders, youth, and two-spirit relatives. So please join me in welcoming this amazing woman and matriarch, Katisha, to the stage.
Ait sgoil, antipate sep yapel with a cook sauce to needlen at zart lip stalium swinimer silk. Heit zapka homoch mestimoch, heit zapka itomoch, heit zapka clately tene, ni to tomoch. Fichom ait schnoikel ait squallow and not samat mestimoch, e na quaella tacha eli. Kathquatlap and Schnuknukwa, Quilkshire sauce and Squatchy Na and Kukwa Eleanor Wells and Kukwa Iona Paul and Spapza Alec Dan. Kukshnamulkalap. It is a good day, everybody. My name is Katisha Paul. Quilksha Sauce, Little Angel, and Tsepyopalwit. I come from the Tsartlip, Statlium, Swinomish, and Syilx nations. It is an honor to be here today. It is an honor to be here on these lands, the Clately Tene. I am honored to be in front of you, our matriarchs, our elders, our knowledge keepers, our youth, our 2S, Two Spirit Plus peoples. I thank the cooks that have been nourishing our bodies. I thank this hotel for the accommodation. I thank those who have allowed you to be here, your families, for sharing your spirits with us in this moment where we are healing in action together. I am honored to have been asked on behalf of the BC First Nations Justice Council to do this work, to speak about our initiatives that we are moving forward with the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan. And I thank the BC Assembly of First Nations for allowing me to be up here today, providing us the space. We also will be hosting some roundtable workshops, and you'll see us out there in the hallway. Don't be afraid to stop by, have a good conversation, grab some tea, grab some water, and we will nourish our souls, our minds, our hearts, and our spirits. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you. I'm thankful for your ancestors who have provided you the strength to be here. I'm honored, and I pray for those that we have lost. You see the empty chairs here, and for us, those empty chairs hold our ancestors. They're here with us, providing us with that power that we need to uplift our spirits, to uplift our souls to get this work done. It is not easy to have these conversations. It is not easy. But the thing is, we're paddling together with Natsamat Mistimuch, with one heart and one mind. And I pray as we continue paddling together that you remember these good feelings with that one mind and one heart. The kwam squallowin, the ait squallowin. Strong heart, strong mind. You'll see on a couple of the tables, before I get started, I want to remind us of the difficulties that we carry as being woman, as being two-spirited plus, the hardships that comes with, as being a knowledge keeper, a language holder. You'll see some rocks. Before I get started, I want to tell you about that importance that we have in connecting to the land, because that's how we heal. All of this work means nothing if we don't remember the importance of the land. Our languages and our cultures are derived from the land. Our ancestors walked out into those forests and witnessed the ways that the waters flowed through those mountains, and they found out who we are as Huamoch Mestimoch, as people of the land. And as our land continues to be extracted, all of our resources dug up from out underneath her, our women too are being hurt. Environmental justice is so connected to women's justice, to reproductive justice. And that is the work we are doing at BCAFN JC here now. We have this ability to work together with that one heart and one mind. I want to stand here as a daughter, as a granddaughter, as a sister, as a niece, as a cousin, to acknowledge those who have helped us along this journey so far at BCAFN JC. We acknowledge and honor and thank all of the participants who attended the 17 regional engagements in BC and 3 virtual engagements in the fall of 2023. And with deep gratitude, we thank our steering committee and the footsteps of those who walked with past coworkers who are no longer with us, whose leadership and voices helped guide the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan. all of our hearts and minds, spirits, they weigh heavy. And as we walk through these conversations, I want to remind each and every one of you to walk gently. Take it easy on yourself. And if you feel that you need to, go outside. Take a moment to breathe and allow yourself and allow the power of that wind to take away what is not yours to carry. There are people here in the next 2 days that are going to help support you. And I encourage you to reach out, even if it's for a hug. I know Simple Jan likes those hugs. This work began long before the national inquiry into the MMIWG2S+. It began with your voices, the voices of survivors and mothers, aunties, youth, matriarchs, grassroots activists, and families who demand justice, safety, and courage. As we move forward, our strong hearts and our strong minds will move together with the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan, not just as a document, but as a living and breathing entity. FNJC wants to acknowledge the financial support of the Women and Gender Equity Canada during the implementation and transparency planning phase of the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan between June 2024 and December 2025. In holding true to our values of transparency and accountability, we are proud to host our second live webinar on June 30th to share an update on the progress and the key learnings of the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan. We had our first update in October of 2024. This session, along with the webinar, highlights milestones, lessons learned, and pathways forward as we focus on the 3 priority strategies of man camps and resource extraction, crisis response, and legislation and policy as it pertains to man camps and resource extraction and crisis response. We are honored to have everyone join us in this circle today and at the virtual circle next week to move forward on this work in a good way with our Indigenous people of the land, our matriarchs, our mothers, women, girls, and 2SLGBTQIA+ voices at the center. Developed by Indigenous women, for Indigenous women, girls, and 2S+ peoples, the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan incorporates the lived realities, voices, and stories from across what is now called BC. Following these engagements, the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan was released in April 2024, and the 3rd Annual Justice Forum. After the release of the plan was endorsed by the BC Assembly of First Nations, thank you, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and the First Nations Summit together as the First Nations Leadership Council. With 15 strategies and 42 lines of action, the plan uplifts the calls for justice, Red Woman Rising, and Highway of Tears Symposium reports, recommendations, visions for systemic change, rooted in truth, human rights, and safety. It addresses barriers across policing, courts, child well-being, corrections, crisis response, man camps, and resource extraction and community safety. It is important to acknowledge that the IWJP is a living document meant to grow and learn, shaped by the ongoing dialogue, such as dialogues that we're having here this week. Reflections, and commitment to transformative change through action. After the release, between June and September of 2024, the Indigenous Women's Justice Team and the Indigenous Justice Secretariat at the Ministry of Attorney General met with representatives of 28 areas of the provincial government to discuss the IWJP, looking for alignment and build relationships to assist in the implementation planning. These were not consultations. They were starting points to share the IWJP and begin building a respectful, collaborative relationship as we move toward the implementation planning with commitment and shared responsibilities and values. Some were warm, some cautious, some still hesitant. As many of us know, when working with government, it's difficult because we're all speaking English, but we're giving different messages that mean different things. When the word reconciliation is used, what does that mean to us as people of the land? Because I know that reconciliation means something different to the government people who have coined that term for us. But we showed up with open hearts and clear minds to begin these relationships. We continue to map where the resources are and where more work is needed. Additionally, BCAFN continues to work together with the province through our joint implementation plan, which identifies the areas of work and shared priorities between BCAFN and the province of BC that we wish to address over the next fiscal year. The plan is currently being formalized and finalized with the government with hopes of finalization this summer. Included in the joint implementation plan is the Indigenous Women's Justice Plan 3 priority strategies. We also reached out to 47 Indigenous-led and allied organizations and met with 8. We know that 8 may sound small to some, but in our world, every open door is met with honesty, and it's a sacred. Those open doors are meant to be. Those who show up and have real conversations with us that continue to cross our paths, we welcome that because we know that Creator only gives us what we can handle. And these relationships of building and creating and meeting new aunties and uncles along this journey to do this work, that's where real action starts. These connections reminded us that trust is earned, that building relationships starts with listening, and open communication and transparency amplifies impact as we walk together with shared values, as many have been consulted before with little to show. That is why we continue to honor the First Nations principles of OCAP: ownership, control, access, and possession. We shared the IWJP, invited feedback, and asked, how do you see yourself connected with this work? How can we support you in your work? We understand that as a collective, we are all working towards a shared vision of ending all forms of violence against our Indigenous women, girls, and 2SLGBTQIA plus peoples. Making these connections and building these relationships help foster a collective strength needed as we continue to fight for safety and justice. Our amazing women's team at BCAFN continues to attend virtual and in-person forums, gatherings, and events, much like this one, to not only report out and gather feedback about our work, but to raise awareness, support, and uplift initiatives with shared values. These moments help us amplify the voices at the heart of the work, your voices, your sisters' voices, the ones that we have lost, those daughters who are not yet born. These moments will continue to ensure that all women know where we belong, that our aunties are safe and are held with pride and dignity. Our pride and our dignity are often compromised. As we heard earlier today, that healing aspect, after colonization, after contact, pride and dignity were stripped from us as women. The non-Indigenous people seen where we held our pride and our dignity. So they took away the land. They took away our woolly dogs so we couldn't weave anymore. They took away the buffalo. They took away our canoes. They stripped our languages from us. They took away our children. They banned us from our own longhouses from singing our songs because that is where our pride and our dignity lands. Too often compromised. Too often taken. But as I look out now, I see you. I see your pride and your dignity. Some of the events included at the BC Society of Transition House's annual training forum, where the women's team hosted a workshop, the Assembly of First Nations National Virtual Forum on Advancing the MMIWG 2S+, CFJ, to spread awareness on the IWJP. Spreading awareness at the Lillooet Domestic Violence Conference, and our council member Lydia Wheatsum did an honoring and a presentation at the Ending Violence Association annual training forum. These spaces will continue to allow us to stand in solidarity with others working to end violence against our Indigenous women, girls, and 2S+. Every gathering is another step towards justice as we strengthen our circles, transfer knowledge, and protect our relatives. Throughout our journey, we continue to learn and adapt to the ever-changing landscape, while ensuring that the voices of our Indigenous women, girls, and 2S+ are at the center of the hearts and minds as we carry out the work. Feedback and insight from government and Indigenous-led meetings were collated and analyzed in alignment with each of the 15 strategies and 42 lines of action. As a part of this analysis, the women's team made changes to the final draft. We revised the draft and made it so that it was able to reflect what we learned. Nothing about our Indigenous Women's Justice Plan is static. It adjusts and reflects along this journey. It's been prepared for print and the broader circulation with transparency as our guiding value. We have made changes throughout the whole IWJP final draft to the following. We have changed child welfare to child well-being. We have changed the letters 2S+ to 2SLGBTQIA+, and made a very small little change to taking out the hyphen between distinctions based. You will see on the new draft that we included a footnote with the first change for each with the rationale within that footnote. The women's team also continues to work on clear reporting pathways so we can track progress publicly and meaningfully. This is done by hosting our webinars, engaging and attending events, and through our Tracking Justice platform, where you can follow our women's journey from the beginning. Tracking Justice also follows all of the rest of the initiatives that we carry forward at the BC First Nations Justice Council. A major learning curve, though, was concluding that it was not possible for us to move forward with a full implementation of the 15 strategies and 42 lines of action. We have limited staff, funding, and political constraints out of the control, so we had to prioritize. In aligning with BC First Nations Justice Council, the Women's Team grounded its prioritization exercise in BCAFN JC Council's strategic priorities, Coyote's version, that was introduced by Council in November 2024. This framework, rooted in storytelling and Indigenous ways of being, knowing, prioritize foundational values such as sustainability, collaboration, accountability, transparency, self-determination, self-governance, effective communication, and respect. By following Coyote's version, using storytelling, and our women's team grouped priorities into the berry patch of justice, with short-term berries representing ripe and ready for action, medium-term berries, which require more patience, and long-term berries, those big, juicy berries, the big dreams. Using Coyote's version of prioritization as a guiding lens for the women's team, we identified the 3 following strategies to move forward. We identified Strategy 8, man camps and resource extraction, Strategy 9, crisis response, and Strategy 15, legislation and policy. as it relates to Strategy 8 and 9. By prioritizing the foundational values of Coyote's Berry Patch of Justice version, the women's team also took into account high engagement and interest from partners, readiness to move forward, and potential for meaningful impact by 2025-2026. High engagements and interest from partners, including relationship building that the women's team built with areas such as the First Nations Leadership Council, MMIWG 2S Plus Collaborative Table, which is still in the making and development. We also worked and aligned with government partners, including the Environmental Assessment Office, Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Management, Ministry of Environment and Parks, Ministry of Energy and Climate Solutions, Ministry of Mining and Critical Minerals, and the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, just to name a few. I wanted to note those specifically because when we think about MMIWG 2S+, it's not just connecting with one ministry. We hold the responsibility together as nations to hold the government accountable on a cross-ministerial approach because they have a responsibility to follow through on the implementation of their own legislation that they passed called the Declaration Act Action Plan here in BC. All ministries, government partners, Indigenous-led and allied organizations, and civil servants, plus BCAFN JC, share a collective responsibility in advocating for and implementing the IWJP. All of us have a part to play. All of us have a paddle to pick up and get us along this journey. And we call on everyone within and outside of the government to walk with us, to paddle with us, to journey with us through continued collaboration and commitment. The women's team also understands that with the current political landscape and the recent passing of Bills 14 and 15, the federal legislation of Bill C5 is a further emphasis on the urgency of implementing the priority strategies as the fear of impacts from increased and streamlined major projects within and surrounding First Nations will have a detrimental impact on the ongoing genocide of our Indigenous women, girls, and 2SLGBTQIA+. We have already put our paddles into the water to address these concerns, and we will be reaching out to the First Nations Energy and Mining Council, the Firelight Group, Natural Resource Canada, and the Environmental Assessment Office. Now let's take a closer look at each of these three strategies. Throughout engagements, we heard clearly and undeniably that the impacts that the resource extraction continues to have on our Indigenous women, girls, and 2S+ peoples, especially with higher impacts being seen in our northern and rural First Nations. Resource extraction comes with the placement of man camps, which brings with it a surge of toxic masculinity, transient workers, substance abuse, gender-based violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, and MMIWG 2S+ peoples. This is a part of a larger systemic pattern of harm, and there is no accountability and no consequences for industry workers who continue to harm our women, which further instills the narrative that our land, much like ourselves, and our women are seen as disposable and available for the taking. Our women are going missing and getting murdered, and there is very little political will to begin a paradigm shift from the depths of insecurity and unsafety to enhance support and safety. Strategy 8 Man Camps and our initiative intends to protect and prevent our Indigenous women, girls, and 2SLGBTQIA+ peoples from the impacts of man camps and resource extraction, which is directly related to the MMIWG 2S+ genocide. Our women will no longer be targeted and taken advantage of by the presence of the toxic masculinity permeating these camps, and industry partners will be held responsible for their actions. Along with the Highway of Tears and our relatives that we met along the way, we all live in fear, and anxiety has been heightened with the increase of man camps and construction. Not only are the camps filling out, local towns are becoming overcrowded with transient workers as hotels and rentals fill up. We are being targeted, stalked, and harassed as we walk home, as we walk to the work and to the grocery stores. And we all know that the police are doing very little, and most of the time nothing, when reports are made against the men from those nearby oil camps. Our girls are being approached by strangers, offered money, rides with no choice, drugs, and worse, with the arrival of mines bringing it more than pollution to our water. Last seen posters flood local stores as families helplessly search. No one from the camps help, and no one is questioned when our families' clothing are found near service and logging roads. Environmental justice is women's justice. As the women's team journeyed along the highway of tears and across BC, we heard the heartbreak, grief, the trauma, and the confusion of missing and murdered loved ones. A story that, sadly, is not foreign to every one of us. It has been 6 years since the release of the final report into the National Inquiry into the MMIWGS 2S+, and our women and girls are still going missing and are being murdered. And now more than ever, it's at an alarming and disproportionate a rate. Within Strategy 9, Crisis Response, the IWJP is about transforming those systems by ensuring that Indigenous nations and communities lead and guide how crisis response works, creating a crisis response plan grounded in nations, grounded with your voices at the center, trauma-informed practices, and culturally rooted support, rooted in who we are in our spirits. Because, as we heard earlier, healed people heal people. So we have to heal our spirits together by returning to that land first, so that way we can teach our young ones that are growing up about the power that they hold, the power that we get from that land that we have to continue protecting. Strategy 9 will guarantee that when Indigenous women, girls, and 2SLGBTQIA+ go missing and or are found murdered, they receive the response and the care that they deserve, the same as any other individual. This includes ensuring that those people who are already responsible when responding to a missing and or murdered person are doing their job properly, timely, and without discrimination or racism, and that justice authorities are working together across jurisdictions. Our third priority, strategy, legislation, and policy, will reflect and be specific to Strategy 8, man camps, resource extraction, and Strategy 9. To ensure meaningful change throughout the implementation of these strategies, we must include a thorough review, amendment, and development of new policies and legislation that align with our basic human rights of Indigenous peoples. Without structural change, the root causes of intergenerational trauma and the continuance of colonial systemic failures will not be addressed, and nothing will change. Legislation and policy will reflect consideration and space for Indigenous worldviews, with particular attention and space to the autonomy and self-governance. Indigenous women, girls, and 2S+ will not feel targeted by laws that are used to criminalize them, but rather a system where First Nations can make a space to revitalize traditional justice practices grounded in our distinct laws, governing structures, and protocols. As the BCAFN JC, we have been mandated by the First Nations Leadership Council to advocate for you. We do not have the right to act on your behalf. It is your inherent birthright as the title and rights holders to be the ones who are meaningfully consulted and engaged from the very beginning to the end of all legislative alignments as they pertain to your people, your lands, and your waters. Consultation is not consent. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples upholds our right as people of the land to free, prior, and informed consent. As we continue to work alongside nations, governments, and like-minded organizations to develop legislation and policies that will protect our peoples, your voices will be amplified. And within all of that, what did we learn through those 17 engagements and the 3 online engagements? And throughout the process of these past couple of years, we learned that relationships take time, and we have learned to move at the speed of trust. We have also learned that the government silos are real, and breaking those down feels sometimes impossible. Coordinating across areas of government remains a challenge. We found this especially difficult during the election time and the interregnum period. The staff turnover and new ministerial mandates impacted communication and paused further meaningful engagement. We have been reminded time and time again by our Elders and Knowledge Keepers Council at BCAFN JC that there is strength in solidarity. The women's team will continue to attend, present, and advocate alongside like-minded organizations to move forward together with one heart and one mind, not samat mestimuch. We also learned that Indigenous women's leadership is vital. I look to our BCAFN women's representative, and I hold my hands up to you in the work that you are doing, a true inspiration. Those who have spoken before me, women who dare and who are not afraid to be in government spaces, to put our foot down and take a seat at the table, to tell the government that we will be idle no more. Change is inevitable. We look at our flowing river's beautiful ability to adapt and mirror her resilience because we have witnessed the effectiveness of transformation. And moving forward, you will see the release of our IWJP, the finalization of implementation plans for the 3 priority ready-to-pick strategies, and continued collaboration with government, Indigenous partners, and like-minded organizations. You will also witness us continue to explore and advocate for long-term sustainable core funding and partnership opportunities. And we will keep paddling in partnership, truth, and care. And as we move forward, we invite each of you to take the time to scan the QR code on the screen, complete our survey, walk with us, communicate with us in the hallway. We have sticky notes that you can write on that will help us guide the implementation process. We ask questions such as, what do you want to see? What can be done? What do you want to see done? How can we help you in your journey as well? And as you provide feedback with the survey, we encourage you to keep at the top of your minds those questions. Who needs to be involved? And what do you want to see? What are you already seeing that you want to amplify and uplift and encourage us and invite us into your spaces and your nations to get the work done? We also welcome feedback and questions, so feel free to send us an email, and you can find us in the hallway, as I mentioned, at our info booth. Haitzapka chomoch mestimuch. I said in the beginning, Thichwam aichnawaiko aichkwalo and natsamat mestimuch. Inakwa elethacha eli. Please remember these good feelings that we share with one heart and one mind. Inakwa elethacha eli. Those who are working together, we're good to one another. Haitzap gatsiam tsiaya. Thank you all so much from my bottom of my heart, my spirit. My spirit and my energy is yours today, tomorrow, and forever as we continue on this journey. And as a granddaughter, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, and an auntie, I'm here for you always, and I'm excited for our paths to continue crossing, and I uplift you. This is not just a thank you where I come from. This is not just a thank you. This is uplifting you in your energies, and I honor you, and I provide you the strength to carry on because I see you. I see the work that's already been done, and I thank you. All of my grandmas, my aunties in here, my uncles, the fight that you took over from your ancestors when they laid that paddle down. When you lay your paddle down, we as youth will pick it up and continue on that journey, paddling together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's very inspiring to hear that this type of work is continuing on. As Grand Chief Stuart Phillip had mentioned in his speech, that there's many of the women and lineages that started the grassroots movement to raise awareness to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and our Two-Spirit and gender diverse relatives are in the room today. So it's very inspiring to see the next generation coming up continuing that work. So thank you so much for your presentation, for all of the outreach that you've done, all of the research you've done on the work that's come before you. And we're here and look forward to your roundtables as well to continue the engagement. So thank you. And I will ask Jaylene to come up to introduce the rest of the panel that we'll hear from, and then tell us what we'll be doing after.
I would love to do that. I just also want to recognize the Big Juicy Dreams was really great to hear. That was amazing, and I could just imagine little Angel as a baby. I could just see it. It's just, but to see that and feel that fierceness that you've been able to really take ownership of it, encourage all of us to take ownership of it. So fantastic. That was just amazing. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome and invite the group members to the stage and to introduce the group to the audience for the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Plus Advisory Group. Reminder of the importance of grounding ourselves for this discussion today with the City of Vancouver and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit Plus Advisory Group. I now invite Rachel and advisory group members to join me on the stage. Let's give them a big round of applause. As they become settled, I would like to introduce Rachel Wutani, who is the BCMCRP Senior Manager, Urban Indigenous Relations at the City of Vancouver, who coordinates the group. Thank you. Joining Rachel, we have members of the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Plus Advisory Group, who will also be speaking to their experience working within the City of Vancouver. Marlene Jack, member of the Cheslata Carrier Nation. Marlene is a Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit family member and advocate. She is also MMIWG2S Advisory member for the City of Vancouver and volunteer and board member of the Downtown East Side Women's Center. Yes, applause. Yes. And okay, I gotta stand back. This is a gorgeous group. Let's take a look here. Okay, and we have Bernie Williams, from the Haida Nation. MMIWG2S family member and advocate, co-founder of the Walk for Justice and February 14th annual Women's Memorial March, City of Vancouver. Yes, advisory committee member, thank you. Just get shivers, chills. Shamansut, Amanda Nahani, did I say that right? Okay. Shamansut, thank you. Shamansut.
Shaman Soap.
Thank you. Mandy. hails from the Squamish Nation and founder of Tradition L since 2012. Not only does she sit on the advisory council at the City of Vancouver and president of Protect Our Indigenous Sisters Society, she is also a First Nation storyteller, actress, model, entrepreneur, facilitator, cultural ambassador, and an up-and-coming MC in the Vancouver music scene. Yes. In 2024, she released her debut Juno-nominated album, Northwest Coast Story. Amazing. And the last member joining us is, last but not least, is Anita McPhee, who is a proud Telton and Tlingit woman from northwestern BC with a strong background in justice, law, and Indigenous rights. She holds a Bachelor of Law and a Bachelor of Social Work from the University of Victoria and has worked across Canada to advance justice for Indigenous peoples and advocate for the safety of Indigenous women and girls. Anita has spoken at the United Nations on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and earned a diploma. I'm just saying this because I just have this wave of emotion over me because this fills me with such pride to share space with you all. This is just beautiful to be able to say. Earned. For her dedication to justice and reconciliation, she was honored with the YWCA Vancouver Women of Distinction Award in Reconciliation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing the tears. I really appreciate that. It's amazing. So, Buju, Nin Anishinaabe, Kakikauya, Gizagat, Sagasta, Seli, Rachel Wetini, Makwa Dodem, Kitchename Kosa, Benenowag. So I'm from Big Trout Lake. My name is Rachel Wetini. I have 3 names. It's Gizagat, Sagasta, Seli, it's Cedar Tree Woman, Little Sunrise, and Bluebird Woman. And I got those names for different, to actually lead different parts of my journey on this earth here. So I'm really grateful. I also want to just give a thanks to the, sorry if I'm not saying it right, I've been practicing Clay Tanae. And I just want to acknowledge, like I pulled up the map here, I just want to acknowledge that the women and the Two-Spirit people have experienced harm and colonization on these lands that we're on today, and that they have inherent rights and they have, and one of the things that I was just thinking about is I have a lot of non-Indigenous women come up to me and say, oh, how do you feel so empowered? And I don't look for empowerment from the white man or from men in general. It comes from our culture and our teachings. And that is actually is the reason why I'm able to work in the city of Vancouver. And when I graduated, like I've always been a human rights, environmental rights, Indigenous rights activist, and I work with youth aging out of foster care, coming out of jail, mental health, everything at the direction of my elders. And I did a master's in community regional planning at UBC, so I could study policies and procedures and look for where the harms are and give recommendations. My good friend Mandy, when I graduated, said, we need you to work in the city because we need you to find out what they're saying and we need our voices heard in there. So I just go for putting me in there. So I just want to, and also Skundal has been there since the beginning, my auntie telling me what to do. So in the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the work we've done since 2019, and then I'll give the advisory a chance to share some of the work they've done and the purpose of the advisory. We are going to go a little bit into lunch because we're starting late, so it's going to be served at 12, so if you need to grab some food, go ahead, eat, and listen to our presentation. So we'll do a project refresh, we'll talk about the advisory, what they asked for, and so we have a 2022 response report. We'll give an update on the internal missing person protocol at the City of Vancouver that we started to develop, and we created a reporting template because we want city staff not just to talk about reconciliation, we want to know exactly how you advanced Indigenous rights, how you created safety for women and Two-Spirit people, and how you created system change. We don't just want to hear we did reconciliation. Like, how exactly did you do that? And we also have a couple advisory members that are not here. So Cecilia and Mary Point, and Elder Rita yeah, they're not here today, and maybe we're recruiting one more. Leslie Bonshore. Okay, and yeah, then the advisory will share. So I'm just going to do a quick project refresh, and I'll try not to talk too quickly. But I just want to remind everybody of the Forsaken report that Wally Opal had put out, the commissioner, when he investigated the RCMP and the VPD, and he gave recommendations to the city and the police stations on what they could do after he pointed out all of these things in the investigations that had gone wrong, and actually called out everybody and said that they had forsaken the women that had gone missing. That actually led to my work, because there was sex worker safety planners that were there, and they were trying to figure out how to implement the calls for justice. So the Urban Indigenous Peoples Advisory Committee passed a motion, asked staff, that was Lillian Howard and Penny Kerrigan, I can't remember everybody else that was on that, but they asked the city, they said, we want to know what actions you've done that align with the calls for justice, if you've done anything at all. So then council passed a motion for me to start the job. And in 2020, I was seconded to Emergency Operations Center for COVID. And so during that time, we started to see that a lot of frontline organizations were not able to do a lot of the frontline work, and that grassroots Indigenous women were stepping up and filling those roles. They were going out late at night. They were going into places where organizations, the police wouldn't go, and helping to get women out of places that they were caused harm. So we actually were able to get some support for a group called Moccasin Mafia that would go out late at night, give food, go out to people that were not going to services, because there's some people that are completely disconnected to services. They were going to them and finding them. So then in 2021, we created the MMIWG2S advisory, and also a director's table with 11 departments at the city, including the VPD, the Parks Board, and the library. And I have it on a different slide. So what we did is we looked at these two reports, the Calls for Justice and Red Women Rising. There's 431 recommendations in total. And so out of Red Women Rising, the 200, there was 141 that we pulled out. We thought that the city could directly do, advocate, or support, and 143 from the Calls for Justice. Some of them are actually more, after this had happened, we had actually found more and added more to the list. So I have to get that count. And then when we looked at them, I gave it to all the departments. I said, look at all these calls for justice and recommendations, and do you have any city actions, whether they're good or not? Like, I want to know what you're doing, and they wanted to know. So 74, the Red Women Rising had actions, and 76 had actions. And when we looked at the data, we found that it was actually in pathways, which is amazing. And they actually fit in with the what the Calls for Justice says are the pathways to lead into MMIWG. So one of them was training and education, and that everybody was doing something around training and education for either reconciliation or knowledge of, how to do a land acknowledgement. And so they had focused on those ones. There was also socioeconomic marginalization, so trying to bring more Indigenous people into city planning and processes, trying to get money out to organizations. What was the other one? I'm not going to go into it too far, but anyways, we looked at the data. The advisory said, well, how do we even know if there's any positive impact? Because we don't feel it. We haven't felt any of the positive impact from anything that you've done. So they wanted to evaluate it. So we looked at the UNDRIP task force at that time that was being created with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and we looked at the JEDI curriculum that the Chief Equity Office had put out. And there was information in there about residential school and I can't even remember what else was in there, but just some knowledge around reconciliation and things, Indigenous knowledge, but nothing in either the UNDRIP task force or in the JEDI curriculum had anything specific to gender or women or safety. So our advisory said they're not doing it. It's an alignment, but they're not doing it with the intent of how it should be done. So there was the 150 recommendations that had actions. They wanted to know positive impact. They also wanted the advisory work to be aligned with UNDRIP. And they wanted to evaluate all the city actions. And I just pulled up Call for Justice 1.2 and then 1.4, but 1.2 just really talking about governments. Oh, this one is about implementing UNDRIP and that all governments should implement UNDRIP. But I highlighted the bottom part because it says eliminating gender discrimination in the Indian Act and amending the Constitution to bring it into conformity with UNDRIP. And the reason why I did that is because when I gave these recommendations to the city staff, they're like, well, we're not the federal government. I said, but you're a government. And you can eliminate gender discrimination in your policies, and you can bring it into conformity with UNDRIP. So I had to tell them, right? Like, you don't have to take it word for word. What can you do? Also, the VPD never adopted our report because there was a recommendation in there for them not to carry lethal weapons. And I said, well, just what recommendations can you do then? Like, don't just stop because of one thing that was said. Like, you can do stuff, right? And then also I pulled out 1.4 because it really helped to advance the work of the advisory. Ensure Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people are represented in governance and that their political rights are respected and upheld. And also, these efforts must include the development of policies and procedures to protect Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people against sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and racism. And I'll give you a couple examples of how we were able to do it in that response report. What the advisory said is they want more engagement on actions that the city is planning to do or has done. They're concerned that the actions wouldn't include voices of Indigenous women on the ground and to ensure that this will happen. They also wanted to meet with the directors table that were from those 11 departments that I told you, and I have a list of them coming up. They also wanted to be more involved and have discussions on how to create ways to engage and ensure that this process includes Indigenous women's voices in a meaningful way. So we came out with a response report with 38 recommendations for the city just to get started. Because when we looked at all of the things that they'd done, we were like, it's almost like you're giving the keys to a plane to someone who only learned how to paint the plane and not fly the plane. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, I don't know how to, I was trying to figure out how to do it because the advisory was so strong and powerful. We want this. And I'm like, how do I make them, you know what I mean, with the whole city, right? And at that point in time, I was a policy planner in social policy. And so I was like down on the ring, right? Planner one. I was trying to figure out how to do that. We had to incorporate ceremony into everything that we did. Elder Rita, we did a lot of ceremony and land offerings and came up with these recommendations. And so I pulled out a couple of them. One of them is support for survivors. And in here it talks about having a healing lodge of wraparound services. Because one of the things that we find, if you're a young person or your family is a survivor and you're going out looking for services, you do an intake here, tell your whole story. Then you go over there, do another intake and another. And then you don't even want to try anymore because you're so sick of nothing being done and continuously telling your story. So how do we get one intake process so that you can now have access to all of these services? That's something that we're trying to work on. Sorry, I don't know why I'm shaking, but we also wanted a Two-Spirit healing lodge, and we didn't have that, but there is something called the Balmoral Hotel that was taken down, and now there's an outdoor space there, and they're going to be using that for interim spaces for healing and families to go to and run programming. Nicole Bird, which is her niche, she runs Carnegie, the Indigenous Relations Carnegie. So she'll be running that program. And Mandy Nahaney is trying to hook them up with like a $50,000 grant. So we're just all over trying to get this together. Because when Skandal and them go out and look for people and they find them, it's the middle of the night. Where are you going to take them? She has to take them to her studio where she does not arts and crafts, where she does her carving. I don't know why I said arts and crafts, but or where do we go, right? If there's nothing set up, there's all this money out there for path forward, but where do you take them? Specifically, we had to look. That's the interim space for ceremony and lodge. So also the engagement part. So one of the things with UNDRIP action plan at the City of Vancouver, I'm not going to go too much into it, but it has 18 action plans on how to implement UNDRIP. I lead 2 of them. One of them is urban Indigenous engagement. The other one is working with police, working with the partners, working with the police, and there's deliverables in there that we're meeting. And so what I did is I took all the engagement recommendations out of our report and other reports and put them into a framework to lead staff on how they engage with Indigenous people. Because what they would do is they would have a plan, say the Downtown Eastside Housing Plan, and then they would just go engage the public. Residential school survivors and people that had went there were now experiencing racism from the public. This is not safe for our people. We don't want to be engaged in that way. So we had to create a whole framework, and in there, we made sure to center it around the nation. So Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh open up all the engagements with their protocols. They call on witnesses to witness, because one of the things that we asked, we said, prove it to the city. Prove that you did reconciliation. Prove that you did that, and get witnesses to follow the protocol. So we started to do that. We also paid everybody by handshake. So at the end of the event, we give them a handshake, thank them, and give them the cash. There's so many things that we did, and I could go off about it forever, but we tried to really incorporate safety for women that were in there when they were experiencing harm. A couple people got triggered. Right away, we had an elder do a song and do medicine. We had Thelma come brush down the whole room. We just did it. Anytime somebody said, we need this, we're like, put it in the framework. And not only did we create the framework, we were also, and it's a pilot right now, we piloted it, but we also create a procedural guide. So follow my, hire DJ Osho to do some music at the event. Don't make it so boring, right? Like we want, and that's what community asked for. They're like, they don't want this boring. Oh, we smudged the whole city hall so that we could get ready. We brought in Thelma Stogan from Musqueam came and brushed down City Hall from the 11th floor all the way down to the basement. It took 4.5 hours. Paid her $5,000 in a handshake. She doesn't have to claim that in a T4. There's no, that we changed honorarium policy to include a handshake protocol so that we don't have to give people T4s when we're trying to engage with them. That was from this advisory. It was actually from Gladys Raddick. Sorry, Gladys Raddick said, I am not giving you my sin. And I was like, I have to pay her. She used to be on the advisory. I'm like, how am I gonna pay her? So I CC'd the chief equity officer. I said, this is embarrassing for an Indigenous woman to be here. How am I supposed to work with my elders? Like, I'm so embarrassed. I was crying. They changed the policy. I mean, you gotta get in there. Your voice has to be in there. And because I have a planning and a master's in planning, I could speak their language. So I'm grateful to be able to learn that. Staff development. So the other thing too is you're a city of reconciliation. How are you gonna prove to the Indigenous people that staff actually have knowledge in reconciliation? So every year you have to do a performance planning review, and there's 10 competencies, leadership competencies. We added reconciliation to it because we wanna know every year how staff are actually doing reconciliation training, knowledge, how they're incorporating it into your work, and you have to give examples in there. And so now we're actually being able to measure it. So as soon as that came out in HR, actually HR didn't want to do MMIWG, they wanted to do reconciliation. I don't know why, but they put it MMIWG under reconciliation, maybe because it like hit people's ears easier, like it's not talking about missing, and I'm not really sure why. But after that, staff came out to me and they said, what can I do? How do I do this performance review? I said, go and listen to the elders, the survivors, the families at the marches, at the protests, at all the events. And you will only learn those things by listening to the speakers. You're not gonna read it or go to a workshop and learn these things. Some of the things that you're gonna learn, you're only gonna learn by smelling the medicines, eating the food, helping the elders. And there's just one more that, oh, I already talked about this one. And that one. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay. So then moving forward in 2023, we started implementing a lot of the recommendations that I already talked about. There's way more in there that we've done too as well. I just don't have enough time. I moved over to Indigenous Relations and became the Senior Manager, Urban Indigenous Relations in our new department because we have an Indigenous Relations department. We never had one before. There was just Indigenous people all spread out the city. We advocated, one of the things that the city said is we're trying to promote women in leadership. We said, what about Indigenous women in leadership? And when they hired the director, they wanted her to be a director underneath a white director. And Indigenous staff said, no, we want her to be in the senior director. And she got moved to a senior director because staff stormed City Hall and said, we need an Indigenous woman leader. I'm emotional because it's like, we just had to do so much work. Like we had to, we just had to experience so much harm and people not prioritizing our work and fighting for it and doing the ceremony and just trying as hard as we could to advance it. It was just a little bit difficult because when people get mad at the city, they get mad. They'll often target the Indigenous woman. You're mad at the government, get mad at the, you know what I mean? And so it's just it was just difficult. The province had been going around talking about the red dress alert all over the province, and they talked about getting an app. And they were like, we're going to get an app that people can sign up to and they can get notifications. We said, that's not good enough. We're going to implement a citywide protocol within the city of Vancouver. And so what we did is I met with everybody in the department and I said, you guys all have a spot to fill in this protocol. I don't know what you can do yet, but we're going to figure this out together. And so what we did, policy. HR joined our directors table in 2024. We actually piloted that framework a couple of times, got feedback on how to do proper engagement. Mary Point, everybody was at all of our meetings being like, you got to do this, you got to do that, and just really explaining how to make it more gender safe, right, in our engagements. So I talked about, and then also, did I mention this? We created a reporting template for staff. So we want to know exactly how you're advancing Indigenous right and creating safety, but there's more points on there. We can share this with you after. And so I will just talk about we're also doing outcome and impact writing workshops for city staff. So if I go and I share the work of UNDRIP or the work of MMIWG with another city, and right away they start trying to do the work and trying to follow us and pass motions to DC, that's an impact for the people that are going to be living in that city, or the women that are going to be in that city, because they're going to have more knowledge of MMIWG and trying to do the work. So I want to talk about the missing person because I see we're going over. So 4.5 of our 2022 response report had a response protocol for missing women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. We wanted it to be, it could be an example, would be an email to city public service departments and community organizations when someone is missing that can be further distributed through community links, share posters and information through the city's social media channels, across designated spaces and digital platforms and community centers, and to advocate for the federal and provincial government for the inclusion of Indigenous intersections, for the criteria of an Amber Alert, which they kind of already did thanks to Leah Gazan and everyone else who did that amazing work. So I'm just going to tell you about how we had to implement it in May. So a missing man from UBC, a young man from UBC went missing. He left UBC at 2 in the morning and he ended up a commercial drive around 6 a.m. And somebody had found his wallet, his shoes, his phone. And VPD contacted me and they said, can you implement the protocol? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'll try. I said, let's just do it, right? And because we called it missing person, like if a missing Chinese girls go missing, we're implementing this protocol and we're looking for everybody. But we're centering it around MMIWG so that we're centered it and our intersections are not left out of it and that we're at the center of it. And we will only implement it right now for until we develop the protocol. So whenever the police make something public, they'll send it to us and we'll implement it right away. But we still have to figure out what it looks like when the police are not looking, because we all have gone through where we're looking and the police haven't started looking and they're not making public. So we're still trying to figure out what that part of it looks like. But to start, VPD said, the deceased person had been seen on a video camera at 6 in the morning. So when they were looking at the Safeway footage of the person that was missing, a sanitation truck went by. And he said, contact the engineers and the garbage trucks and everybody's on the bylaw enforcement, like everybody who's on the front line at the city, parking people, like just everybody. I sent it to everybody. And I sent it to the departments and I said, send it to all your frontline staff and then let me know who you sent it to and how it went. It went everywhere. So I sent it to the engineering department, arts, culture, community services, development, business licensing, real estate and facilities management, the city manager's office, which has Indigenous relations, and also Vancouver emergency management. So they manage all emergencies in Vancouver, including COVID, any natural disasters. The public library, the Parks Board, HR, Finance, Fire, Rescue, and Civic Engagement and Communications. And the people who started searching right away were engineers, like all the frontline staff and the workers, they all had the poster. ACCS distributed to everybody on their frontline. Also to 15 organizations, I don't have the list on me. The Vancouver Public Library right away started printing out because there was no family in Vancouver searching for him. So I was going to go put the posters out. They started printing, and actually VPL said, we can be a central source for families and survivors. We'll train our staff, we'll do printing, and we'll help with any social media, any of the things that they can be central place, and the fire department. So each department had a lot of questions of who it should be shared with. We asked to send it to all frontline staff. We also had to apply a trauma-informed approach because some people, staff had missing people in their life, and we didn't want to cause trauma. So what we did is we sent the instructions of how to share the alert and what to do, and we added the missing person poster as a PDF. Sorry, the food is served, so I'm at my last slide. What's that person's name? Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. So Kim McLean, who I can't remember her title right now, but she works underneath him. She was a part of our table when we were developing the protocol, and she said, well, we could offer $100K, and that would actually go to families and survivors that are missing so that we could implement it right away. I don't know how the budget will look like for that, but one thing that we need to do to actually create the protocol and to get it formalized is that someone in the city has to step up and sponsor it. I don't know why I can't. I think it's because I don't do services. So that's what we're trying to look at right now. But I've also met with the BC Union of BC municipalities and their advisory committee. And also we have a meeting with all staff in all cities across Canada. All Indigenous planners across Canada have a conversation where we share this information so that more cities will have a missing person protocol and look for it. So in May was the first time the whole city had actually looked for somebody in their job. And then I think this is the last. Am I going the wrong way? Okay, here we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that right now what we're doing with what UNDRIP did is they got the change management team to do a whole citywide implementation plan, and that's what we're working on right now. And so I just wanted to hand it over to Marlene to share a little bit of the missing the search that she's doing for her family and what kind of the things that she had to do that is really important for families and survivors to understand. And yeah, just a little context is that, you know, she's been searching for a long time. There's a poster here. And yeah, I'll just pass it over to you. And thank you. Aichka.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marlene Jack. Doreen is my older sister. She's the missing Jack family. So in the beginning, when they first went missing, I was always in contact with the RCMP. So I had one officer that was investigating threatened me. He asked me, told me actually, to not talk to media about my sister's case. And they said if I spoke to media, they would cut me off with all information regarding my sister's case, so I would have to go through another family member to have that information. So I got scared and I believed them. Like, I was young and never spoke up then. Now, no, you're not gonna shut me up now. So I was living in Vancouver and I met Bernie and Gladys Reddick. We were at, they approached me and asked me if I was the family member. And I said, yeah, Doreen's my older sister. And they asked me to talk to a reporter. It was just a small newspaper in Vancouver, like it wasn't popular. But I got scared. I said, no, I'm not talking. The cops are gonna cut me off. It took them a long time. But after I talked to the first reporter, nothing happened, and then I started speaking more and started with Gladys and Bernie helping me. We brought more awareness about our family's disappearance. And I've been working hard since then. I've been doing searches. I did a private search last year. I'll be coming back August. We're doing a memorial. at the park across the street from the First Leader Pub. That's where they were last seen. So it'll be there August 2nd, and then after that, I'll be doing another search. Just so we can't let the RCMP like push us into fear. That they've done it for so many years that the court, because we sent them questions ahead of hand, but then we came up with a couple of surprise ones too. So, but they were more prepared the next time. So Chantal's been a huge help. She used to work with CBC Indigenous, and with my search I did last year, I was struggling, like I was calling on Facebook for donations, do this and that, and she was with me the whole time, but she never asked for anything, not one thing. She paid for everything on her own. She drove us around with her dollars, and she paid her own room. I offered her to help her, and she refused to help. She just said, I'm here for you. So this is awesome to have. If you can get an investigative reporter with you on your family, I would strongly advise you get one, because that'll be the best thing that'll happen. To me, having Chantal with me is awesome. Thank you, Chantal.
And one more thing too is that the investigative reporter can get through different processes and stuff. Like they have an inside so they can get information that you can't get as a family member. So I wanted her to share that. It's really important that you work with the investigative reporters because they have different skills.
Yep.
That are, yeah.
They can access maps.
All kinds of stuff.
Everything. They
Yeah.
can do like maps from way back, 1960 or something. You can get all that information, but they can access that. They can access past records of people, what they used to do, property ownership. Most important is property ownership. Because when I did my search, I didn't just go on the property. I had to ask for permission, and we had to find out who we were dealing with first, and then we'd be able to go do that.
Thank you so much. That's amazing for sharing that work with us. I'm going to pass it over to Skundal to share a little bit about how the grassroots stepped in to fill in the gaps, right? In so many different ways.
I just want to say how respected elders and chiefs, hereditary chiefs, matriarchs, and survivors and families. I just want to say how my traditional name is Golgi Chad, which means golden spruce woman. I come from a small village in Haida Old Masset, and that's one of my traditional name. That's my grandmother's name. I also come from like a double chief's house. My grandmother is the only woman that owns 2 chief's houses in the whole island of Haida. My father is Statlian from Lillooet. I'm just learning about that side. I grew up back in residential school. I'm a Indian Day School 60 scoop, and also I'm just grateful to be here. I was going to say something else, but and I also identify myself as like a two-spirited woman, and too. I want to say how again. My journey, like many, I grew up on the streets. They used to call it Apache Pass in Prince Rupert. I'm going on 68, so we're going to go way back, but not too far back. That's where my journey began. I was human trafficked at the age of 11. 6 of us children didn't know what human trafficking was back then. I'm going to go full speed ahead now. Married a very violent man, ran away from residential school, ended up marrying this most violent man, but at least I didn't have to go back. Thought that at that time. I don't know what was the less of 2 evils here. Anyways, had 3 children. I ended up doing federal time, and I'm an ex-addict. Then I ended up in Vancouver with 3 sons. My goal and my aspiration, my dream was, I spoke fluent Haida back then, but I don't, and I really apologize. I don't know one word of it today. My aspirations and my dream was I wanted to be an artist and a carver. That's all I ever wanted to be. I remember laying on a log that Robert Davidson had just carved his first pole, and I believe that was in about 60 years set for the first pole to go up. And I remember as a little girl when I seen that, I found it one of the most fascinating things. And I grew up with my grandmother that I loved dearly. And that's what I wanted to be. So I made it a mission to find out where Bill Reed was. And I found him down on Granville Island. Here's a kid off the street. You know, he said no. But I wheeled my youngest boy, 3 months old. I wheeled him down there every day for 1 month, and then finally, everything changed for me. So that's what I wanted to be. But in the meantime, I met some elders, and many of these women, warrior women, will recognize their names. Kitty Sparrow, Bernice Brown, Mary McCaskill, Harriet Nahaney. My life changed. When I got asked, "Who are you?" I said, "My name is Bernie Williams." "No, who are you?" So I found out who I was. I found out that my mother was also a residential school survivor in Port Alberni, my father right in Kamloops. So my journey began. Then I ended up leaving Bill Reed. They came in one day. I thought they were taking me out for lunch. Well, no lunch. They just said, "You grab your bag. You're coming with us." And we were just working on the Spirit of Haida, the big piece that's at Vancouver International Airport. And then my journey began. And I found out about my mother, who's a residential school survivor. She was murdered in the downtown east side. And two of my older sisters were murdered in the downtown east side. And my baby sister was murdered in Merritt. And I heard someone speak here earlier, about being angry. I was angry. So my life, it just went into a total different spin. So I've been on the front line since 1986 with these gracious elders. I only have one elder left. That's Elder Rita Blind out of 7 of these elders. So I always tease them, everything that I am today, and if I speak inappropriately, I always tell them, don't leave me unattended too long, because I get myself into mischief all the time. I'm always into mischief. I am a true born raven, so you could see from there. But my journey began. I'm always asked this question, and this is where I met Grand Chief Stuart Phillips back over 25 years ago, where we couldn't even get through those doors. We couldn't even get through the Union of BC Indian Chiefs doors. We couldn't get through the First Nations Summit doors. And the city, we could not get support help. But it took us over 25 years of persistent, and we did. And this is where I met this amazing man, like his Grand Chief Stewart, Sean Atleo, Wayne Christian, Chief Judy Wilson, there's Jody Wilson-Rabel, these amazing warriors that, who just really stood up. And I'm always asked this question, like I said, how has things changed from back then to now? They haven't. There's more of our women that are missing and murdered, and our young men and our boys that are missing like ever. I was given the great pleasure, of Michelle Odette, when she was the commissioner, to be her advisor. And the stories, and we traveled extensively for over 4 years, meeting family members from all across Canada. It was one of the hardest that we ever, after the national inquiry was done, it took us, it took me almost 6 months to just to come alive. You live, you breathe this air of sadness and grief, uncertainty, lies that you've been told for so many years. And now we're back here. I've been on probably over 45, maybe 50 grid searches. We just completed one just this past weekend. That's one of the hardest things that you're going to ever have to do. As a family member myself, we meet families in the downtown east side, and this is one of the things that we are really advocating and fighting for. We've been asking for this for well over 30 years. I've been doing on the front line with the MMIWG almost 40 years now. More than half my life has been spent on those front lines and traveling with families. We've been fighting for these safe places for the families to go. I know what it's like being, on those front lines. I know what it's like looking for your loved ones. And we have no places to bring these families. I'm reminded about Kelsey Poorman's father driving in his van from Saskatchewan, sleeping in his van. This should never happen to our families. It's hard enough, when as soon as you get those, at the news, you'll never even, I know you all know. But when we look at the Yatsadas and these 3 levels of government, they don't have a clue. They always just think that we're there for handouts. No, that, stop playing politics, with our family lives here. And that's always been our message. So what we do, I'm still on the front lines. I have a group that's called the Moccasin Mafia. We're the ones that she was speaking about, that we feed 300 meals a night. Doesn't matter, rain, storm, sleet, whatever it is. When those doors shut, when COVID hit, and I want to honor is Erica Grant from up here. I don't know if she's Nishka, or she was the one that said, we need to do this for the people. And we did. We started cooking in our own places. We were only allowed to buy 1 loaf of bread. So we started heading out to Mission, Abbotsford, Maple Ridge, also making sure that the people that were homeless, that are missing, if we could find them, that we were basically the only ones. And through Rachel, we managed to get a little bit funding just so that we can go out on those front lines. So what we do on the front lines, and I want to just make this really quick. So what we do on the front lines, we hold several hats. We are also called the Vigil Aunties. That don't ask. So we're called the Vigilantes. So we go out. So we go out, and when we get word that a loved one, because you got to remember, through COVID, there was nobody really talking about our loved ones that were missing in that whole time frame. Everybody was shut down in fear, whatever, like sick, ending up in the hospitals, losing their own loved ones, and that. But we had to keep moving. We had to keep moving ahead. And to date, when we did because we are doing one more walk, the final walk to Ottawa, 20th anniversary next year, Walk for Justice. We are going to do the final walk with a report card to the federal government, and it's a fail. So out of 231 calls for justice to date, the Canadian government has only done 2. In the province of BC here, we know that, and it's really funny about David Eby, because David Eby, when he came out of law school, who's the premier, was mentored by those very women that I had mentioned, mentored to make sure that so our friend Cameron Ward with Robert Willie Picton, because our group has been very much involved with the Robert Willie Picton to make sure that he was not going to be let go again. Our premier was one of the lawyers that Cameron Ward had came in at the Wally Opal. So we thought that when he got in, that he would really pushed for at the MMIWG2S that he would be there, is walking with us, and yet he's done the opposite. He's done nothing. So here in BC, only 2 things have been done, and they're not even honoring any of that. Highway of Tears, when we did the first symposium, that was back in 2006. Florence Nazil was the one that says we're going to do a walk, so we walked through the snowstorm from Prince Rupert to Prince George to open up at that symposium. And that was 2006. And it was the Chief Ron from Witsat, formerly called Morristown, and another group in Terrace. So out of that 31 resolution call out, only 2 have been done. That's it. And you look at for UNDRIP, only 95. And so when we're looking at all of this and the human trafficking, Rachel and us have been involved at, we were very lucky that we managed, because like we keep in touch, we managed to get to fly 2 women home who were being tracked by at their predators. We've been involved with at the human trafficking for many decades, but where it is today for us, it is very scary. Very scary. We got a group, and I'm going to say it out. I don't care if there's police in here, you're going to hear it. There's this gang from Montreal that's called Zone 43. These are a group of young African men. The price for our women, their worth is only $10,000 per. So the life and what they go through, and they controlled that whole area. We brought the 3 names of the buildings to the city. Rachel has been really on it too, but nothing's done. Nothing's been done. We stopped 6 women at the First United Church before they started building. The conversation was heard. I got on that phone right away. We make that call. 3 girls that were trafficked from Edmonton to Vancouver, from Vancouver to Edmonton, was stopped within 8 hours. Because what they do, they hold our women in these trap houses. They're called trap houses. So if, and I pray to God that none of your loved ones ever go missing, or if they ever end up, and the other part of this that I want to say, every big sporting event or concert, something that's big, that's going to attract a lot of people coming in, this is where we also recognize and notice our women, and our young boys will go missing. Because it's such a big event and everybody's all crazy and they don't think. But these trap houses, Anita's going to share with you, her story and that. But what I'm trying to say is that nothing has changed. We are doing that walk back to Ottawa. We've had enough. We've got the unions that are behind us. We are going back with that report card, and we're just done. This should not be, over 40 years, of me doing this, and many other elders, families here who've been doing it a lot longer than we've been doing it. This should not be happening. It should not be. So what we tried to do is go out with our vigilante women's team and at the Moccasin Mafia is to educate while we're handing out the food that these are the safe places to go. But the key thing that I'm really focusing on is that we need a safe space for families. Say hypothetically, if they came from Prince George here, that we can set them up in a safe space that they don't have to be sleeping in their vehicles or their vans, that they are being taken care of. Being taken care of in that. Like I said, I just came back from the grid search. My relative is missing, Deanna Wirtz. We know that this was a copy killer to Robert Willie Pickton, but unfortunately, this evil man died about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. So, and I really don't know what else to say except that, you know, heck, we are still on those front lines, and we are still fighting heck for places for our families that are on foot, tired, hungry. They have to even, you know, when they start reaching out for gas cards, you know, that, you know, even that is, we should be taking care of them. And that's been a fight with us for, God, since Gregor and even Larry Campbell and them came through. And that, you know, and we should have a safe space for them. And anyways, Hawa again for allowing me to share my truth. And if I've said anything, it's not my intentions to offend or upset you in that. Hawa.
I just want to share one thing that she forgot to share was that she actually did a partnership, was it with Air Canada? So she actually got somebody out of a really harmful situation that was being human trafficked, and then went to the airport and worked with the airport to get her on the airplane without ID. So that's one of the things, without the papers and yeah, without money and without ID to get her home because she was really at risk and she was stuck down in Vancouver. So that's some of the things that they can do. And I'll pass it over to Anita. I know that we are running out of time, but thank you so much for letting us share our stories. And Anita and Amanda are both doing amazing work. So I'll also invite you guys to share. And one of the things that would be helpful is when people do go missing from other places in BC and they're found in Vancouver, Scundle is trying to figure out how to get them home. So sometimes we might need a partnership with an agency or a First Nation on how we collaborate to get, we don't want to just dump them off there without housing, without a plan. So we'd also need that support too when we're doing this work for a missing person. So I'll pass it over to Anita.
And Watari, you know, where we work out is a really safe place for them to go. I work in the courts and that, so it's all good. I'm not going to put you out in jail, but you know, it's a very safe place for us, you know, to bring your loved ones to. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Madu, Koskuya, Ushia, Danasotia, Chiona Justini, Gutsma Justini, Tagish Kwan Justini, and my English name is Anita McPhee, and I'm Taltan, and I'm Tlingit, and I'm very proud to be a part of the MMIWG 2S advisory group for the City of Vancouver. I've been doing advocacy since about 2001. Thank you. How I came to be doing this work is one day, one of my elders was getting ready to set up for the march. And they said, come with me, I want to show you something. And they took me all out to all the places where our women were found and murdered or went missing from it. It really broke my heart, right? And I also started thinking about lifestyle. And I started thinking about my own lifestyle. And my lifestyle was pretty high risk back then. Just young, not caring. Even though I was educated, I was still out living my life. And I didn't know that I was a target for this type of violence. And when I found out, that's when I was like, I'm going to do something about it. I got a big voice. I'm going to say something. And then I learned about Highway 16, and holy God, that's when I really went wild with all the information, because I just thought, I'm Taltan, and I have to travel this highway every year to go get salmon from Vancouver all the way up to Telegraph. And you know, back then I was fearless, and now I'm scared to death when I have to go and take that ride once we get past Kitwanga, because on Highway 37 there's no cell service. There's only Wi-Fi in 3 places in that 7-hour drive, and you have to pay for it. So there you go, government. if anybody's from the government, if they hear, that's one of the things that we really need is safety. And so we're working with the city of Vancouver. They listened. And they listened because we had elders like Bernie, and I'm not going to call Marlene elder, no way. But working with these ladies from Moccasin Mafia, you know, they really helped show us around and showed us what to do and gave us advice, and here we are. And also, me and Mandy are founding members of a society called Protect Our Indigenous Sister Society, where we support advocates who are doing this work. So we do it by prevention. We also do things to support each other and all the other advocates, because this is hard work, and a lot of times you don't get the support you need as an advocate, you know, and sometimes it's nice just to get together and even just share a meal. Sometimes it's nice to have someone teach us information that we don't know. And it sometimes just feels good to get together as Indigenous women, like today. So that's what we do with our society. But right now, we're really trying to focus on providing support for families in the city of Vancouver when a member goes missing, because my nephew went missing. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but it was last year. Must be getting older because time's flying by. Oh. Anyway, you know, he went missing, and you know, when any of you family members go missing, you lose your mind. Like, you don't even know what to think. And so we're handing out posters, and people were like, well, where are we going to look? And I was like, well, we should go downtown East Side. And then I said, I got friends who will help me. So I called these ladies, and Bernie showed up right away. And I tell you, the stress that we went through, Bernie just took us through, she's like, through every alley and went through to every bar. And then she showed us where some of those trap houses were. And you know what? My nephew was in there. She found him. And lucky, so we went back to our family. We said, we know where he is. And then someone on his side, his cousin, went and picked him up. And that's the problem right there, is that what do you do when you find your member? And what if they're, you know, right in the middle of addiction, or they have no money to get home, and our home is far away? Like, to drive from Vancouver to Telegraph Creek, it takes 3 days of driving, even if you're a fast driver. And so we were like, this is a really big problem. This is a huge problem. Our people are going missing all the time, and there's no support for families in place when the member goes missing. We had to just dig in our pockets and look around for what change we had, what money we had, you know, to help out, because the thing is information doesn't come free. You know, it's just, that's the world we live in, and that's what we had to do. And we were going down, and I'm telling you, these ladies are like, look how tall I am, and Bernie's tougher than me. We were going down, and she's like, walk through this alley with me. And I had my other friend who's really tough, and she's shorter than me too. She's like, we'll go in the van. I say, yeah, I'm going in the van. Bernie's like, I'm gonna walk. Bernie looks at me, but like, I just, like, I'm not that tough. And I just want you to know, like, it's hard work. Like, you don't imagine what you see and what they go through. You know, it's a lot. And for somebody like me who used to be rowdy and getting fights and stuff like that, I couldn't even do what Bernie does. So I just really hats off to the Moccasin Mafia and looking for our family members. And when they helped find my family member, it was, you know, it was thanks to them that they did this work. So that's where we, as an advisory, we said, we've got to get money for families. This can't be happening. There's got to be a reserve, you know, because it just, like, it costs from posters to everything. And I just want to mention one thing about City of Vancouver, is through the work that we did through our advisory and the Urban Indigenous Advisory Group, but especially for this group, the MMIWG Advisory Group, they were able to provide us space from the Vancouver Public Library. So if families need help, like printing posters or they need somewhere to go, they've provided us that space to do that. So, you know, if we really want to pass this message on to you, because we want to pass it on to the other cities, like the city of Prince George, you know, to do this type of work, because we know that our members are going missing throughout British Columbia and at high rates. Because when I go to Kitwanga and I go to that intersection and I go to that restaurant and I check that missing board all the time, it's covered. It's covered in missing people. It's heartbreaking to see that, you know? It's heartbreaking to know that there's a national inquiry into this work and nothing is being done. And I apologize if I took a few minutes over, and I apologize for getting upset, but it's really upsetting that we've done all this work and it seems to be going on deaf ears in the government. And it's even more deaf when they're allowing industry to come into our communities and into our territories without consultation under Bills 13 and 14. And if I got the numbers wrong, you know which ones they are. That's wrong. And that's the same David Eby who was helping these ladies. It just goes to show when you go into government how quickly you can change. And so we really need that support for our families and our women and our young men who are going missing now too. So, Madhu.
Thank you so much, Anita. And then we'll pass the mic to Mandy. We're going to take a break at 1 o'clock, which is in like 4 minutes-ish or whatever, but feel free to share.
I wrote some notes. I'm not a note person, but this is really emotional, so I wanted to make sure I said everything I want to say. Why simgiget sigidum hana scuba wilsip, the sim niskatnin witwil witget, the sim get one so. To chiefs, matriarchs, children of high birth. I come from the Nisgat Nation. I come from the Hausla. My mother is Dalgamha. To know yap yawit wanaswit, nail to ant shaman sokoshame, to na chantla, skoholt mish os, to na chantla slaano homeoch, Nathan shaman sokoshame, nail quin the tash quin man. To you all respected people, I come from the Squamish Nation. I come from the village of Slaan. My father is Latash. It feels extremely good in my heart to be here today. Thank you to the BCAFN for providing the space, for gathering us all here in a good way. Thank you to the organizers who put some really good thought into how this is going to be, how we're going to do this today, all the supports that are in place and everything. I came in here trembling and scared to talk. But because of all the support and the traditional welcome, the drums, all the language that was spoken, I feel really good to be here. Thank you so much. I had to heal myself as a young mother. I had a boy at 21 years old. I came to the realization that I was the drama. Thank you. I wanted to change so I could be the backbone. My grandfather and uncle showed me that I was to be cherished, loved, and encouraged. My grandmothers and aunts taught me to be a loving mother and an older sister. My role as the eldest sister was to look after my younger sisters and make sure they're adhering to our laws and protocols. They sat me down and when I turned 19 years old and they said, that's your job. That's your one job you have, is to protect your sisters. So I've taken that upon all my sisters. My mom and dad have dedicated since day one and have picked me up every time I needed them. That is my rule as a parent, unconditionally lift them up, surround them in culture and family. And I extend that to all Indigenous community, not just my children, but all children. I'm an educator. After working on the MMIW inquiry dialogues as a note taker, it changed my life for the better. I wrote a song called Can't Kill Me as a reclamation of my spirit, my strength, and voice. This gave me the courage to work on MMIW work. This work is for everyone's children, for everyone's parent. It has been the most rewarding thing to sit at the table with Indigenous matriarchs at the City of Vancouver to develop a system of how we can find our family members and loved ones. We encourage everyone to collaborate with us and help hold our people up. A powerful moment was when the City of Vancouver, when the MMIW Advisory Committee went into the City of Vancouver chambers. We were all dressed in full regalia, and we marched in there singing the Women's Warrior song to bring in our motion that was passed. I stood there holding my baby son. He's 3 years old now, but he was a baby at the time, and I told them, no more children are going to be taken away from their mothers, and we're going to make sure of that. It is in the memory of the ones that we lost that we have to be stronger today. Rachel is the skipper of our canoe, and we are the pullers. We all pull together with love and respect. I appreciate, oh yeah, I said that. She is our translator. As you know, our elders are residential school survivors. They have been putting in the work for the last 20 years. So it's up to us to pick up a paddle and paddle with them in that canoe. Bring that canoe to great distances all across this country. These things that we're doing by remembering our teachings, remembering who we are, and never faltering from that is going to teach the world better tools of how to create safety, of how to make a better place in the world. And that's our job and duty. So we're incredibly honored to be here. Thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you to BCAFN for having us here. Thank you to all you beautiful people. Miigwech. Oh, do we have a break? Okay, yes, let's sing.
So does anyone have a drum on you? Yeah, we're gonna take a break now, half an hour break. We'll go into the break with the Women's Warrior song.
Hey, 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 yahee-oh, yahee-oh, hey, yahee-oh, yahee-oh, hey, yahee-oh,
My work time?
So we're going to be taking a break. We'll be back at 1:30 for the Zoom members here. Thank you so much, and we will see you at 1:30. All my love, all my relations. Zoom.